Hey guys, tonight we begin with something truly claustrophobic. A concrete tomb buried beneath the ruins of Berlin. We are diving deep into what life was really like inside Hitler's underground command bunker during the final months of World War II. Forget the dramatic films, the polished documentaries. The truth is far more suffocating, more desperate, and infinitely stranger than anything Hollywood could manufacture. So before you settle in, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you are tuning in from and what time it is for you. It is always fascinating to see who is joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let us ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you have just been assigned to the Führerbunker in Berlin. The year is 1945. Above you, the Soviet army is pulverizing what remains of the German capital into dust and ash. Below you, 30 feet under the Reich Chancellery Garden, you are about to spend your final weeks in a subterranean maze of reinforced concrete, where daylight is a distant memory and fresh air is a luxury no one can afford. Your new home is a sealed environment where the ventilation system recycles the same stale breath over and over, where the walls weep condensation, and where everyone knows exactly how this story ends. Welcome to the bunker. Your shift starts now. Chapter 1. The Descent into the Deep. You are standing in the Reich Chancellery Garden, or what used to be a garden. Now it is a crater-pocked wasteland of shattered statuary and uprooted trees. Soviet artillery shells scream overhead every few minutes, their impacts shaking the ground beneath your boots. Somewhere in the distance, you hear the distinctive rattle of machine gun fire. Berlin is dying around you, block by block, street by street. Your escort, an SS officer with hollow eyes and a uniform that has not been cleaned in weeks, gestures toward a concrete structure that barely rises above ground level. It looks like a bunker entrance. It is a bunker entrance. This is your new assignment. He does not wish you luck. He does not say anything at all. He just opens the heavy steel door and motions for you to descend. The staircase is narrow. The walls are thick concrete, already showing stress cracks from the constant bombardment above. You count the steps as you go down. 30, 40, 50. The temperature drops with each step. The air grows heavier, damper. You can taste it on your tongue, a metallic flavor mixed with something organic and unpleasant. At the bottom of the first staircase, there is a landing. Then another staircase. You are going deeper. The Führerbunker is not just one level. It is two. The upper level, the Führerbunker, is where most of the staff work and sleep. The lower level, the Führerbunker proper, is where Hitler himself resides. You will be working on both levels, and right now you are heading all the way down. The second staircase is even narrower. Your shoulders nearly brush both walls. There is no natural light anymore. The only illumination comes from bare bulbs strung along the ceiling, their weak yellow glow barely cutting through the gloom. You can hear voices now, muffled and distant. The hum of machinery, the constant drip of water somewhere in the darkness. You reach the bottom. The air here is thick enough to chew. It smells like wet concrete, diesel exhaust, unwashed bodies, and something else. Something chemical. Disinfectant maybe, struggling and failing to mask the underlying rot. This is the smell you will carry with you for the rest of your life, assuming you survive long enough to have a rest of your life. A guard checks your papers. He barely looks at your face. He has seen hundreds of faces down here, and they all blur together after a while. You are just another body, another set of hands, another soul being fed into the machinery of a dying regime. He waves you through into a narrow corridor. The ceiling is low, maybe 7 feet high. The walls are painted an institutional pale green that has already started to peel and blister from the moisture. The floor is concrete, cold and perpetually damp. Your footsteps echo in strange ways, the sound bouncing off surfaces you cannot see. Welcome to the Führerbunker. This is home now. There are approximately 18 small rooms down here on the lower level, plus a handful of larger spaces. The entire complex, both levels combined, covers an area of roughly 3,000 square feet. That might sound spacious until you realize that at any given time, There are anywhere from 30 to 50 people living and working in this underground tomb. Let us be clear about what you are walking into. This bunker was designed as a last resort, a final refuge when everything else had failed. And everything else has failed. The Third Reich that was supposed to last 1,000 years is in its death throes. Above you, Soviet forces are grinding through the city, street by street, building by building. They are maybe a mile away now, maybe less. The sound of their artillery is constant, a rhythmic thunder that never stops, day or night. Here is the thing nobody tells you about being underground during an artillery bombardment. You can feel it. Every shell that hits nearby sends vibrations through the concrete. Dust drifts down from the ceiling with each impact. The lights flicker. Sometimes they go out entirely for a few seconds before the backup generator kicks in. And in those moments of darkness, you can hear people breathing around you, quick and shallow, trying not to panic. You pass a small room on your left. Through the open door, you see a narrow bed, a small desk, and a single chair. The room is maybe 6 feet by 9 feet. A coffin with a door. These are the private quarters for the senior staff. If you are lucky enough to be assigned a bunk down here, it will be in one of the communal rooms, sleeping on a narrow cot with a dozen other people around you. The corridor turns. You smell food cooking. Not good food. The scent is of boiled cabbage and some kind of meat that has been stretched far beyond its natural lifespan. Your stomach growls anyway. You have not eaten since early morning, and it is now well past dark. Not that you can tell down here. Time works differently in the bunker. There are no windows, no sun, no moon, just the eternal electric glow and the constant awareness of the weight of earth and concrete pressing down above you. A woman in a nurse's uniform hurries past you, carrying a medical kit. She does not make eye contact. No one makes eye contact down here unless they have to. Everyone is wrapped up in their own private horror, their own personal calculation of how much longer this can possibly last. You hear raised voices coming from somewhere deeper in the complex. German, but the words are unclear. The acoustics down here are strange. Sounds travel in unexpected ways, bouncing and distorting until you cannot tell if someone is shouting in the next room or 3 rooms away. Your escort has stopped in front of a door. He knocks twice, waits, then opens it. Inside is a small office crammed with filing cabinets, a desk buried under papers, and a telephone that rings even as you enter. Your new commanding officer looks up at you. He is maybe 40, but he looks 60. Gray skin, sunken eyes. He gestures for you to sit. He does not welcome you. He does not ask how you are doing. He simply starts explaining your duties. You will be working 18-hour shifts, maybe 20. There is no distinction between day and night down here, so you work when you are needed. Your responsibilities will include message running, filing, assisting with communications, and whatever else anyone of higher rank decides you should be doing. He tells you that discipline is absolute. Defeatism is punishable by immediate execution. Desertion is impossible anyway, because where would you go? The Soviets are up there, waiting. The only way out of this bunker is either through victory, which no one believes in anymore, or through death, which everyone believes is coming soon. He dismisses you. Your escort leads you to your bunk. It is in a room with 12 other beds, all occupied. Men are sleeping, some snoring, others tossing restlessly. The air in here is thick with the smell of sweat and stale breath. Your bunk is the only empty one. A narrow cot with a thin mattress and a single wool blanket that has seen better decades. You sit down. The mattress is lumpy and smells faintly of mildew. You realize you have not seen the sky in what feels like hours but is actually less than 30 minutes. You are going to be down here for days, maybe weeks, maybe until the end, whatever the end looks like. This is your life now, 30 feet underground, sealed in concrete, breathing recycled air, listening to the artillery bombardment shake the walls, waiting for orders that make less sense with each passing hour. Serving a regime that exists now only in the minds of the people trapped down here with you. Welcome to the Führerbunker. It only gets worse from here. Chapter 2. Your first breath of bunker air. Take a deep breath. Go ahead. Fill your lungs. That taste in your mouth right now, that is what every breath tastes like down here. It is not fresh air. It is not even stale air. It is recycled, processed, filtered, and reused air that has already passed through dozens of other lungs before it gets to yours. The ventilation system is working overtime, pulling in whatever atmosphere it can from the surface and pushing it through a series of filters designed to remove poison gas in case of a chemical attack. Those filters do not remove the smell of diesel fuel from the generators. They do not remove the smell of human bodies packed too closely together. They do not remove the underlying scent of damp concrete and slow decay. The ventilation system is loud. It is a constant mechanical hum that penetrates every corner of the bunker. You will learn to sleep through it because you have no choice. The alternative is no air circulation at all, and that is a death sentence when you have this many people packed into this small a space. Here is what the system actually does. There are air intake vents disguised in the Reich Chancellery Garden above. These vents pull in outside air, which is currently full of smoke, dust, and the chemical residue of high explosives detonating every few minutes. That air is forced through activated charcoal filters, then down into the bunker complex through a series of ducts and pipes. The air pressure down here is kept slightly positive, meaning air is always trying to push out rather than being sucked in. This is supposed to prevent poison gas from seeping into the bunker through cracks or damaged seals. The system was designed by engineers who assumed the bunker would be used for short periods during air raids. They did not design it for continuous occupation by dozens of people over weeks and months. As a result, the air quality is, to put it mildly, terrible. You can feel it in your sinuses after the first hour. A dull ache that never quite goes away. Your throat feels scratchy, dry. You drink more water than you normally would, but it does not help. Everyone down here has the same dry cough, the same throat-clearing tick that punctuates every conversation. It is the sound of the bunker, this constant collective cough echoing through the concrete corridors. The humidity is wrong too. Sometimes it is too dry, the recycled air sucking moisture from your skin and leaving your lips cracked and bleeding. Other times, especially near the shower facilities and the kitchen, the humidity spikes to jungle levels. Condensation runs down the walls in visible streams. The concrete weeps. Everything feels damp and cold and slightly slimy to the touch. Carbon dioxide builds up in the poorly ventilated rooms. You notice it first as a headache, then as a creeping fatigue that makes thinking feel like wading through mud. Some rooms are worse than others. The conference room, where senior officers gather for hours-long strategy meetings that accomplish nothing, is notorious for being nearly unbreathable by the end of the day. People emerge from those meetings red-faced and gasping, gulping down whatever passes for fresh air in the corridors. There is no smoking allowed in most of the bunker. This is not for health reasons. It is because the ventilation system cannot handle it. Too many cigarettes in too small a space and the whole level fills with smoke that has nowhere to go. But people smoke anyway because what else is there to do while you wait for the end? They smoke in designated areas, in small groups, holding their cigarettes close and drawing the smoke deep into their lungs as if it might somehow cleanse them of the bunker air. Hitler himself has strict rules about air quality in his personal quarters. His rooms are fitted with additional filters and a separate ventilation circuit. His air is slightly better than everyone else's, though better is a relative term. It still tastes like concrete and desperation. It is just a slightly more refined vintage of concrete and desperation. You learn quickly to identify the different smells that layer through the bunker air. There is the diesel smell from the generators, a thick petroleum reek that coats the back of your throat. There is the food smell, an ever-present aroma of boiled vegetables and mystery meat that makes you simultaneously hungry and nauseous. There is the human smell, the accumulated sweat and unwashed bodies of people who have not seen a proper bath in days or weeks. There is also a chemical smell that no one talks about. It is strongest near the medical station. Sharp, clinical. It is the smell of disinfectant and something else underneath. Something medicinal. You learn not to ask what medications are being administered, to whom and why. Some questions do not have answers you want to hear. The air feels heavy, oppressive, presses down on you like a physical weight. You find yourself taking shorter, shallower breaths without realizing it, as if your body is trying to minimize contact with this atmosphere. Your chest feels tight, constricted. It is not claustrophobia, not exactly. It is something deeper. It is the awareness that you are breathing the same molecules over and over, that there is no fresh air coming, that the outside world might as well be on another planet. At night, or what passes for night down here, the ventilation system is sometimes throttled back to save fuel for the generators. The air becomes even heavier, even staler. You wake up gasping, your mouth dry as sand, your head pounding from carbon dioxide buildup. You are not alone. All around you in the darkness, you can hear other people waking up, coughing, shifting on their bunks, all of you trapped together in this concrete lung that is slowly suffocating. Here is the wildest part about the air down here. It is killing you. Slowly, incrementally, but definitely. Every breath is a little bit poison. Not enough to drop you immediately, but enough to wear you down over time. Your immune system weakens. Your thinking gets fuzzy. Your sleep, when you can manage to sleep, is restless and unsatisfying. You are deteriorating cell by cell, breath by breath, and there is absolutely nothing you can do about it. You cannot open a window. There are no windows. You cannot step outside for a breath of fresh air. Outside is an active war zone where Soviet soldiers are hunting for any sign of German resistance. Your only choice is to keep breathing the bunker air and hope that whatever is going to happen happens soon, before the air quality degrades to the point where people start passing out from hypoxia. So you breathe, in and out. The mechanical hum of the ventilation system provides the rhythm. The taste of diesel and damp concrete becomes your new normal. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you count each breath, wondering which one will be your last. This is life in the bunker. Every breath is a reminder that you are buried alive. Chapter 3. The Architecture of Paranoia. Let us talk about the structure of your new home. Because architecture matters when you are living in a concrete box designed to withstand a direct hit from a 2,000-pound bomb. The Führerbunker complex consists of two main levels. The upper level, the Führerbunker, was built first back in 1943. It is older, slightly less reinforced, and houses most of the support staff. The lower level, the Führerbunker proper, was completed in 1944. This is where Hitler lives, where the senior command staff works, and where you will spend most of your waking hours. The walls are reinforced concrete, 16 feet thick in some places. The ceiling is 12 feet of concrete reinforced with steel rebar in a grid pattern that the engineers swore would withstand anything short of a nuclear bomb. They did not have nuclear bombs in mind when they designed this place. They were thinking about conventional explosives, heavy bombs, artillery shells, the kind of punishment that Berlin is taking right now, hour after hour, day after day. The ceiling height in most rooms is just over 7 feet. This is not an accident. Low ceilings mean less air volume to heat and ventilate. It also means that anyone over 6 feet tall spends their entire time down here slightly hunched, their shoulders curved inward, their necks bent at an uncomfortable angle. You see it in everyone after a few days. This distinctive bunker posture, as if the weight of the concrete above is physically pressing them down into the earth. The corridors are narrow, barely wide enough for two people to pass each other without turning sideways. This is intentional. Narrow corridors are easier to defend if the bunker is breached. They create choke points, kill zones. The whole complex is designed with siege mentality baked into every angle and dimension. The floors are concrete, painted gray, and perpetually damp. Water seeps up from below despite the waterproofing that was supposedly installed during construction. The water table under Berlin is high, and all that weight of concrete sitting on top of the soil has compressed the earth, forcing groundwater up through microscopic cracks and fissures. The result is that the floors are always slightly wet, always cold, and always slippery. People shuffle rather than walk, their feet making soft sliding sounds against the damp concrete. There are 18 rooms on the lower level. Let me walk you through them because you will need to know this layout like the back of your hand. Hitler's personal suite consists of 4 rooms in the center of the complex. His bedroom, barely large enough for a single bed and a small nightstand. His personal bathroom, which is actually functional, unlike the communal facilities that everyone else uses. A small sitting room where he takes his meals, paces endlessly, and receives visitors. and a study lined with maps that are increasingly useless as the situation deteriorates. Next to Hitler's quarters is Eva Braun's room. It is even smaller than his. A bed, a dresser, and barely enough space to turn around. The walls are bare concrete. She has tried to make it more homely with a few personal items, photographs, some jewelry, but you cannot polish concrete into comfort. The map room is where the daily briefings happen. It is dominated by a large table covered in maps of Berlin, Germany, and the rapidly shrinking territories still under German control. The maps are marked with pins and pencils, showing troop positions that are hours out of date before they are even drawn. The room smells like paper and ink and the sweat of desperate men trying to make reality conform to their wishes. The conference room is next door. This is where the senior staff meet to discuss strategy, which is a polite way of saying they argue about which impossible orders to issue next. The room has a single long table, chairs for maybe 12 people, and walls lined with filing cabinets stuffed with documents that no one will ever read again. The telephone switchboard room is a nerve center of failing communications. 3 operators sit in front of a wall of plugs and cables, trying to maintain contact with military units that are either being overrun or have stopped responding entirely. The equipment is pre-war technology, already outdated, and failing more frequently as the power supply becomes less reliable. The kitchen is a narrow galley barely 8 feet by 12 feet. It has 2 hot plates, a sink with running water that comes from a cistern above, and shelving that holds progressively fewer supplies with each passing day. The cook works miracles with what he has, but miracles only stretch so far when your ingredients consist of canned vegetables, dried meat, and potatoes that are sprouting eyes. There are 2 communal sleeping rooms for lower-ranking staff. Each room has 12 bunks arranged in rows of 3 high. The bunks are metal frames with thin mattresses. No privacy, no personal space, just bodies packed together like sardines, breathing the same air, listening to each other cough and shift and dream of somewhere else. The medical station is a converted storage room. It has a single examination table, a cabinet with increasingly depleted medical supplies, and a doctor who was trained to handle combat wounds but now spends most of his time treating stress-related illnesses, infections from the unsanitary conditions, and a growing number of people who are simply giving up, their bodies shutting down from exhaustion and despair. The lavatory facilities are the most hated rooms in the entire complex. There are 2 small bathrooms, each with a single toilet and a sink, for dozens of people. The toilets are constantly backing up because the sewage system was not designed for continuous occupation. The smell is indescribable. Imagine a public restroom that has not been cleaned in weeks. Multiply that by the stress of people with deteriorating digestive systems from bad food and constant fear, and you begin to approach the reality of the bunker bathrooms. The shower room is adjacent to the bathrooms. It has 2 shower heads and a water heater that works intermittently. Water is rationed, so showers are limited to 3 minutes, twice a week if you are lucky. The water comes out cold more often than hot. The drain is perpetually clogged with hair and soap scum. The floor is slimy with mold that no amount of scrubbing can eliminate. Storage rooms take up the remaining space. They are crammed with supplies that were supposed to last months but are disappearing at an alarming rate. Canned food, water in jerry cans, fuel for the generators, ammunition, though what good bullets will do against Soviet tanks is unclear. Medical supplies, office supplies, everything stacked in precarious piles that shift and topple whenever an artillery shell hits nearby. The emergency exit is at the far end of the complex. It is a narrow staircase that leads up through 16 feet of concrete to an exit in the Reich Chancellery Garden. The exit is disguised, camouflaged, and locked from the inside. It is supposed to be used only if the main entrance is blocked or if the bunker is being overrun. No one wants to think about what overrun would actually look like. The ventilation shafts run through the walls and ceiling like arteries. They are narrow tubes, maybe 12 inches in diameter, that carry air from the filtration system to the various rooms. Sometimes you can hear them whistling when the air pressure changes. Sometimes you hear things crawling inside them. Rats, probably. The rats found their way down here weeks ago, attracted by the food waste and the warmth. They live in the ventilation shafts and emerge at night to scavenge. No one bothers trying to kill them anymore. There are too many, and everyone has bigger problems. The lighting is a mix of ceiling-mounted fixtures and wall sconces, all burning weak incandescent bulbs that give everything a yellowish pallor. The lights flicker constantly as the generator struggles to maintain stable voltage. Sometimes sections of the bunker go dark for minutes at a time while the electricians scramble to fix whatever has failed. Everyone carries a flashlight. You learn to keep it within reach at all times, because stumbling around in the pitch black of a bunker during an artillery barrage is a fast way to crack your skull open on a concrete wall. The whole complex was designed to be sealed, airtight, gas-tight, a hermetically closed environment that could sustain life even if the surface above was saturated with poison gas. That seal is failing. You can feel it in the way air pressure changes suddenly, your ears popping as gaps open in the concrete from the constant bombardment. You can see it in the new cracks that appear in the walls daily, hairline fractures that weep moisture and let in dust from above. Here is the thing nobody tells you about living in a sealed concrete box. The space starts to feel smaller every day. Not because it physically shrinks, but because your perception of it compresses. The walls seem to close in. The ceilings seem to lower. The corridors seem to narrow. It is psychological, but it is also very real. You find yourself breathing faster, your heart rate elevated, your palms sweating for no reason except that your primitive brain is screaming at you that you are trapped, buried, entombed. And your primitive brain is absolutely correct. This bunker was built to keep people alive. But alive is not the same as living. You are existing in a concrete cage designed by paranoid men who believed that enough steel and concrete could protect them from the consequences of their actions. They were wrong. The walls are not thick enough. The ceiling is not strong enough. And no amount of reinforced concrete can protect you from the knowledge that the world above is collapsing and there is nowhere left to run. So you memorize the layout. You learn which rooms are safe and which are suffocating. You learn where the air is breathable and where it is toxic. You learn the quickest routes through the narrow corridors. And you try not to think about the fact that all of this knowledge is useless, because there is no escape, no rescue coming, nothing but more time in this concrete tomb waiting for the inevitable. Welcome to the architecture of paranoia. Every angle is wrong. Every dimension is oppressive. And every square foot is a reminder that you are living in a monument to a dying regime's final desperate delusion. Chapter 4. The daily routine in the deep. Morning does not exist in the bunker. There is no sunrise, no dawn chorus of birds, no gradual lightening of the sky. There is only the moment when someone shakes you awake and tells you your shift is starting. You wake up in the dark. Someone else's flashlight beam sweeps across your face. You are needed. Time to move. You have no idea what time it actually is. Your body has lost all sense of circadian rhythm. You might have slept for 2 hours or 6. It feels the same either way, a restless unconsciousness that does nothing to refresh you. You swing your legs off the bunk. Your feet touch cold, damp concrete. You are still wearing most of your clothes because it is cold down here, always cold, and because getting dressed in a room full of other sleeping people is nearly impossible without waking half of them. Your boots are where you left them, soaked from walking through the perpetually wet corridors. The schedule, such as it exists, is dictated by Hitler's personal routine. He is a night owl by nature and by paranoia. He sleeps irregularly, often not going to bed until 4 or 5 in the morning, then sleeping until early afternoon. This means everyone else's schedule is inverted too. The bunker is most active during the hours when normal people would be sleeping. Your first task of the day is checking in at the communications room. Messages have been coming in overnight, though fewer and fewer as outlying units are overrun or simply stop responding. You sort through the papers, prioritizing them by urgency. Everything is urgent. Nothing matters. The reports all say the same thing in different words. We are surrounded. We are running out of ammunition. We need reinforcements. Reinforcements that do not exist. Breakfast, if you can call it that, is served in shifts in the narrow kitchen area. Today it is ersatz coffee, which is not coffee at all but roasted barley and chicory that vaguely resembles the idea of coffee if you have forgotten what real coffee tastes like. There is dark bread, hard and stale, rationed to 3 thin slices per person. There is a small portion of margarine that tastes like hydrogenated regret. If you are lucky, there might be jam, but the jam ran out 2 days ago. You eat standing up because there are not enough chairs. You eat quickly because there is always someone waiting for their turn. The coffee substitute is bitter and leaves a grainy residue in your mouth. The bread requires serious chewing, your jaw working hard to break down something that has the texture of compressed sawdust. But you eat it all because you have learned not to waste food. You have learned that hunger is a constant companion down here, a background noise that never quite goes away. After breakfast, you report to your assigned duties. For you, this means running messages between the various rooms and levels of the bunker. You are a human telegraph system, carrying slips of paper from one officer to another, from the communications room to the map room, from the map room to Hitler's suite. The messages you carry are increasingly absurd. Orders to military units that no longer exist. Demands for equipment that cannot be delivered. Strategic plans that have no connection to the reality on the surface. You read some of them as you walk, not because you are supposed to, but because boredom and curiosity are impossible to suppress entirely. The disconnect between what these papers claim and what is actually happening is staggering. You climb the stairs between levels dozens of times per shift. Your legs burn. Your lungs strain in the oxygen-depleted air. By the end of the day, your thighs are screaming and you can barely catch your breath. Everyone down here has the same lean, exhausted look. Not from lack of food, though rations are tight. From the constant physical exertion of moving through this vertical maze combined with air that cannot quite support the level of activity demanded. Lunch is served around what would be 2 in the afternoon if anyone was keeping normal time. It is soup. Always soup. The ingredients vary based on what is left in the stores. Today it is potato soup with small pieces of something that might be meat or might be mushroom. It is impossible to tell in the dim light, and you have learned not to examine your food too closely. The soup is thin, more broth than substance, but it is hot and wet and you drink it straight from the bowl because spoons are in short supply. The afternoon, such as it is, involves more message running, more filing, more pretending that any of this bureaucratic machinery still has a purpose. You spend an hour in the map room watching officers move pins around on maps, as if repositioning tiny metal markers could somehow reverse the tide of Soviet armor rolling through the streets above. You watch Hitler emerge from his quarters for the daily briefing. He looks terrible. Gray skin, trembling hands. He shuffles rather than walks, his left arm hanging limp at his side, a tremor running through his entire body. This is the man who is supposedly directing the defense of Berlin. He can barely direct himself to a chair. The briefing is an exercise in collective delusion. Officers report on counterattacks that exist only on paper. They discuss reinforcements that will never arrive. They present plans for breaking the Soviet encirclement that would require resources Germany no longer possesses. Hitler listens or appears to listen, his head nodding slightly, his eyes focused on something no one else can see. Sometimes he explodes, screaming about betrayal, about cowards, about the German people failing him rather than the other way around. His face turns red. Spit flies from his mouth. His hands shake so violently that papers fall from his grip. These rages burn hot and fast, then collapse into a mumbling depression that is somehow worse than the screaming. After the briefing, there is a lull. This is when people try to grab what rest they can. You find a quiet corner and sit with your back against the cold concrete wall. You close your eyes, but you do not sleep. Sleep during the day, or what passes for day, is nearly impossible. There is too much activity, too much noise, the constant thrum of the ventilation system, the footsteps echoing through corridors, the ring of telephones that no one wants to answer because the news is never good. Dinner is the largest meal of the day, relatively speaking. Tonight it is canned beef, potatoes, and more cabbage. Always cabbage. The entire bunker has started to smell like boiled cabbage, a odor that has seeped into the concrete and will probably linger here long after everyone is dead. The beef is stringy and has that distinctive canned taste, metallic and slightly off. But it is protein, and protein is precious. You eat in the communal dining area, such as it is. A narrow room with a few tables and benches. People eat in shifts, 5 or 6 at a time. No one talks much. Conversation requires energy that no one has to spare. You chew mechanically, swallow, chew again. Your mind is elsewhere, anywhere but here. Evening brings another round of briefings, more messages, more futile activity. The communications room receives a report that Soviet forces have advanced another 3 blocks. They are now less than a mile from the Reich Chancellery. You can feel it in the bunker, a collective tensing, like an animal that knows the predator is closing in. Someone turns on the radio in the common area. It is tuned to a German station that is still broadcasting. The announcer speaks of glorious resistance, of the German spirit, of final victory. No one in the bunker believes a word of it. You can hear the Soviet artillery in the background of the broadcast, the microphones picking up the distant thunder of the bombardment. Reality bleeds through even the most carefully constructed propaganda. Night, if you can call it night, brings a slight reduction in activity. The lights are dimmed to conserve generator fuel. The bunker settles into a different rhythm, quieter but no less tense. This is when the fear becomes most acute. During the day, or what passes for day, you can lose yourself in tasks, in movement, in the illusion of purposeful activity. At night, there is nothing to do but think. You lie on your bunk, listening to the sounds of the bunker. Someone is crying softly in one of the other rooms. Someone else is praying. The words indistinct, but the tone unmistakable. The ventilation system hums and rattles. Water drips somewhere in the darkness. An artillery shell hits close enough to shake dust from the ceiling. You hear it patter down onto the blankets around you. A soft, sandy sound that gets into everything. Sleep, when it comes, is shallow and broken. You dream of the surface, of sunlight, of fresh air. You dream of walking through a park, feeling grass under your feet, seeing trees and sky. You wake up and the dream evaporates, replaced by the reality of cold concrete and recycled air and the knowledge that today will be exactly like yesterday, and tomorrow will be worse. This is the daily routine in the deep. Wake up, eat, work, try to sleep, fail to sleep, lie awake listening to the artillery and wondering how much longer this can possibly continue. There is no variety, no relief, no hope of change. Just the same compressed cycle repeating endlessly in the darkness underground. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you are counting. Counting meals, counting shifts, counting shells hitting overhead. Counting down to something, though what exactly that something is, no one dares to say out loud. Chapter 5. The food situation. Let us talk about what you are eating, because food is one of those basic necessities that reveals just how far things have fallen. The bunker was supposed to have supplies for 6 months. That was the plan back when the bunker was still a theoretical refuge rather than a desperate last stand. Someone did the calculations. Someone ordered the provisions. Someone signed off on a menu that assumed normal consumption rates and a stable supply chain. That person was an optimist. Or an idiot. Possibly both. The reality is that supplies are disappearing far faster than planned. Partly because there are more people down here than the bunker was designed to hold. Partly because resupply from the surface is becoming impossible as Soviet forces tighten their grip on the city. And partly because some of those carefully hoarded supplies were never as carefully hoarded as the paperwork claimed. The storage rooms are lined with shelves that are looking increasingly empty. The canned goods that once filled every available space are now arranged with visible gaps between them. Someone has taken to spacing out the remaining cans to make the shelves look fuller than they are. It is not working. Everyone can count. Everyone can do the math. At current consumption rates, the food will run out in maybe 3 weeks. Maybe less. The staples of the bunker diet are potatoes, cabbage, and canned meat. You eat potatoes boiled, mashed, fried if there is any oil left, which there usually is not. You eat cabbage steamed, stewed, and in soup that is mostly water with a few sad leaves floating in it. The canned meat is a mystery. The labels claim it is beef. Sometimes it is pork. Occasionally it is something that might be horse. You learn not to ask questions. Breakfast, as we discussed, is ersatz coffee and dark bread. The bread is made from flour that is getting older and moldier with each passing week. Sometimes you can see the mold, little green or white spots that you pick off before eating. Sometimes the mold is integrated throughout, giving the bread a slightly fuzzy texture and a taste that is definitely off. You eat it anyway because calories are calories. The margarine is rancid, not slightly rancid, deeply, profoundly, unmistakably rancid. It smells like old socks and tastes worse. But it is fat, and fat is energy, and energy is survival. So you spread the rancid margarine on the moldy bread, and you chew and you swallow and you try not to gag. Lunch is almost always soup. The base is usually water from the cistern, which has started to taste increasingly metallic as the pipes degrade. Into this water goes whatever vegetables are left. Potatoes, always potatoes. Cabbage, obviously. Carrots, if there are any, which there have not been for several days. Onions, though the onions ran out last week. The cook tries to vary the soup with whatever canned goods he can scrounge. One day it is tomato soup, which is just crushed tomatoes from a can diluted with water until it is more pink than red. Another day it is pea soup, made from dried peas that require hours of boiling to become even remotely edible. The cook does his best, but his best is increasingly limited by the harsh reality of depleted supplies. Dinner is the main meal, the one where you might actually get some protein. The canned meat makes its appearance here, usually in the form of a stew or a casserole. The cook stretches the meat as far as it will go, cutting it into smaller and smaller pieces, bulking up the dish with potatoes and cabbage and whatever else is available. Some nights there is canned fish. Sardines, mostly. They come packed in oil that has solidified into a waxy gel that clings to everything it touches. The sardines themselves are salty, fishy, and have a texture like wet cardboard. But they are protein, and protein is increasingly precious as the meat supplies dwindle. There is no fresh food, no fruit, no vegetables that have not been canned or dried or preserved in some way that strips them of both nutrition and flavor. The last time anyone saw a fresh apple or a tomato or a piece of lettuce was weeks ago. Some people are starting to show signs of vitamin deficiency. Bleeding gums, loose teeth, skin that bruises easily. These are the early warning signs of scurvy, a disease that should not exist in the 20th century, but absolutely does exist in this concrete tomb where fresh produce is a distant memory. Water is technically plentiful but practically problematic. The bunker has a cistern that was filled when the complex was completed. The cistern is supposed to hold enough water for months. But the water tastes increasingly strange as it sits in its concrete tank, absorbing flavors from the concrete, from the pipes, from whatever biological processes are happening in water that has been sitting still for too long. You drink the water because what choice do you have? You drink it warm because there is no refrigeration. You drink it knowing that it probably contains things that should not be in drinking water. But what can you do? Boiling it would use fuel that is needed for cooking. Filtering it through cloth removes visible particles but does nothing for whatever dissolved substances are making it taste like licking a battery. Tea exists, but it is weak. The tea leaves are reused multiple times, each steeping producing a paler, more flavorless liquid than the last. By the third or fourth steeping, you are basically drinking hot water with a faint memory of tea. But the ritual of tea, the act of sitting with a warm cup, provides a psychological comfort that has nothing to do with the beverage itself. Coffee, real coffee, ran out 2 weeks ago. The ersatz coffee substitute is made from roasted barley, chicory root, and the shattered dreams of everyone who remembers what real coffee tasted like. It is brown. It is hot. That is where the resemblance to coffee ends. Tastes like burnt grain and disappointment. You drink it anyway because the caffeine-like compound it contains, assuming it contains anything, provides a slight mental edge that you desperately need. Sugar is gone. The last of the sugar was used up days ago. The cook has been hoarding a small jar of honey for special occasions, though what would qualify as a special occasion in a bunker during the final days of a lost war is unclear. Some people have started trading favors for a spoonful of that honey. It is becoming a currency, a measure of value in an economy that has collapsed to barter and desperation. Salt is still plentiful, ironically. Mountains of salt. Enough salt to preserve 100 corpses. Not enough of anything worth preserving. The food is oversalted as a result, the cook using salt to try to mask the declining quality of the ingredients. Everything tastes aggressively salty, leaving you perpetually thirsty, drinking more of that metallic cistern water, creating a cycle of consumption that achieves nothing. Alcohol exists but is strictly rationed and controlled. There is a supply of schnapps, cognac, and champagne that was brought down for Hitler and the senior staff. The lower ranks are not supposed to have access to it. But things have a way of disappearing in the bunker. Bottles go missing. People show up to shifts with slightly glazed eyes and the smell of alcohol on their breath. No one reports it. Everyone understands. Sometimes a drink is the only thing standing between you and a complete mental collapse. Cigarettes are more valuable than food. People who do not smoke trade their meals for cigarettes. People who do smoke skip meals to afford their habit. The smoke rooms are constantly occupied. Men and women huddle together, drawing smoke deep into their lungs, exhaling slowly, finding in that brief nicotine rush a momentary escape from the reality of their situation. The cook himself is a tragic figure. He was trained at one of Berlin's finest restaurants before the war. He could create culinary masterpieces from the best ingredients. Now he is reduced to stretching canned meat and making palatable the unpalatable. You see him sometimes late at night, sitting alone in the kitchen, staring at the nearly empty shelves, his expression a mix of despair and grim determination. He will keep cooking until there is nothing left to cook. Then what? Some people have stopped eating. Not deliberately, they just lose their appetite. The combination of stress, fear, and the increasingly terrible quality of the food has robbed them of any desire to eat. They have to be reminded to take their meals. They have to be watched to make sure they actually consume something. Their eyes are hollow. Their clothes hang loose. They are wasting away even though technically there is still food available. Others eat compulsively, stuffing themselves whenever food is available. Their bodies driven by a primitive panic that whispers this might be the last meal. Better eat everything now while you can. They are getting rounder even as everyone else is getting thinner, their bodies storing fat for a famine that is already here. The question everyone is asking but no one wants to answer out loud is this: what happens when the food runs out? The war is not going to end in the next 3 weeks. The Soviets are not going to withdraw. Reinforcements are not coming. So what happens when the last can of meat is opened, the last potato is boiled, the last scrap of moldy bread is chewed and swallowed? No one has an answer. Or rather, everyone has the same answer, but no one wants to say it. Because saying it makes it real. And reality down here is already more than anyone can bear. So you eat your potato soup. You chew your stale bread. You drink your ersatz coffee. And you try not to think about the fact that every meal brings you closer to the last one. Every bite is a countdown. Every swallow is a reminder that time is running out in ways that have nothing to do with Soviet tanks or Allied bombers. This is the food situation in the bunker. It is not about nutrition anymore. It is not about taste or satisfaction. It is about extending the inevitable for as long as possible. It is about keeping bodies functioning just long enough to see what comes next, even though what comes next is obvious to everyone. Bon appetit, if you can still remember what that phrase means. Chapter 6. Where and how you sleep. Sleep in the bunker is not restful. It is not refreshing. It is a temporary shutdown of consciousness that your body demands but your mind resists with every fiber of its being. Your bunk, as we have established, is a metal frame with a thin mattress in a room you share with 11 other people. The mattress is maybe 2 inches thick, filled with some kind of compressed material that might have been foam once but is now more like cardboard. You can feel the metal frame through it, the crossbars digging into your back, your hips, your shoulders. The mattress is covered with a sheet that was white once. Now it is a gray that no amount of washing can improve. The washing facilities in the bunker are minimal. Laundry is done when water can be spared, which is almost never. So the sheets accumulate layers of sweat, dead skin cells, and the general funk of human occupation. They smell like the person who slept in this bunk before you, and the person before them, and all the way back to when the bunker first opened. You have one wool blanket. It is German military issue, rough and scratchy, and provides minimal warmth in the constant chill of the underground. The blanket is also damp because everything in the bunker is damp. The moisture in the air condenses on every surface, including fabric. You pull the damp wool blanket over yourself and try to find a position that is less uncomfortable than the others. The pillow is a small lumpy affair, filled with something that might be feathers or might be shredded rags. Provides no support whatsoever. Most people end up folding their uniform jacket or an extra shirt and using that as a pillow instead. It is not better, but it is not worse, and at least you know what is inside it. There is no privacy. None. The bunks are arranged in 3 rows of 4, all in one room. When you lie down, you can hear the person above you breathing. You can hear the person below you shifting on their creaking metal frame. You can hear all 11 other people in various states of wakefulness and attempted sleep. Some snore. Some grind their teeth. Some talk in their sleep, mumbling words you cannot quite make out but can infer are not happy thoughts. The room is never completely dark. Even when the main lights are turned off to save generator fuel, there is always a small bulb burning in the hallway outside. Its weak light seeps under the door and through the gap at the bottom, casting just enough illumination that you can see shapes moving in the darkness. It is unsettling, this half-light that is neither full darkness nor day. Your eyes never fully adjust. Your brain never fully shuts down. The ventilation system is loudest at night. Or maybe it just seems louder because there is less other noise to mask it. The mechanical hum is constant, rising and falling in pitch as the system struggles to move air through the complex. Sometimes it makes a grinding sound, metal on metal, that sets your teeth on edge. Sometimes it whistles, a high-pitched note that drills into your skull and makes sleep impossible. You learn to sleep in your clothes, partly because getting undressed in a room full of people is awkward, partly because the bunker is cold and you need the extra layers, but mostly because you never know when you will be woken up and told to move, to work, to respond to some emergency real or imagined. Being dressed means you can roll out of your bunk and be functional in seconds rather than minutes. Your boots stay on or within arm's reach. The floor is always wet, always cold, and you do not want to put your feet down on that damp concrete in your socks. Some people sleep with their boots on. It is uncomfortable, but it is faster. Speed matters when an artillery shell hits close enough to shake the bunker, and you need to verify that the ceiling is not about to collapse on your head. The sleep schedule is chaotic. There is no regular bedtime. You sleep when your shift ends, whenever that happens to be. Sometimes you work an 18-hour shift and collapse into your bunk at what might be 3 in the morning or 3 in the afternoon. Time has no meaning. Sleep happens when your body simply cannot function anymore. The quality of sleep is terrible. You drift off, but you never go deep. Your nervous system stays on alert, monitoring for threats, processing sounds, keeping you in a state of perpetual semi-consciousness. You dream, but the dreams are anxious, fragmented things. Dreams of being chased. Dreams of walls closing in. Dreams of suffocation. You wake up frequently. Sometimes because someone else is moving around the room, their footsteps echoing on the concrete floor. Sometimes because an artillery shell hits close enough to rattle the bed frames. Sometimes because your body just decides it has had enough of this inadequate rest and jerks you awake for no reason. When you wake up in the middle of a sleep period, it is disorienting. You open your eyes to the dim light filtering from the hallway. You have no idea what time it is. You have no idea how long you have been asleep. Minutes? Hours? Your internal clock has been destroyed by weeks of irregular schedules and no natural light. You lie there in the darkness, listening to people breathe, wondering if you should try to sleep more or just give up and start your day. The worst part is the thoughts that come when you are trying to sleep. During the day, you can keep busy. You can focus on tasks. You can occupy your mind with the mundane details of survival. But at night, lying on a thin mattress in the dark, there is nothing to distract you from the reality of your situation. You think about the surface, about the battle happening overhead, about Soviet soldiers moving through the ruins of Berlin, getting closer with each passing hour. You think about what will happen when they reach the bunker. You think about surrender, capture, execution. Your mind runs through scenarios, each one worse than the last. You think about home, if you still have a home, if your family is alive, if anyone you knew before this nightmare is still out there somewhere. The bunker has no phone privileges for regular staff. You have not spoken to anyone outside this concrete box in weeks. For all you know, everyone you ever cared about is dead. You think about food. Your stomach growls even though you ate your ration hours ago. The food is insufficient. You are hungry all the time now, a gnawing emptiness that sleep does not erase. You fantasize about meals you had before the war. Real coffee, fresh bread, fruit. Your mouth waters and your stomach clenches and you feel even more awake than before. You think about the fact that you might die down here, that this damp bunk in this concrete room might be the last place you ever lie down, that your body might never see sunlight again. This thought triggers a panic response that makes your heart race and your breathing quicken. You force yourself to breathe slowly, to calm down, but the panic is always there, hovering at the edge of consciousness. Some people cannot sleep at all. You see them during the day, their eyes red and exhausted, their hands shaking from fatigue. They have crossed some threshold where their nervous system simply will not allow them to shut down. They lie in their bunks, eyes wide open, staring at the concrete ceiling, their minds racing through the same terrible thoughts over and over until they are barely coherent. The doctor has sleeping pills, but the supply is limited and reserved for emergencies. People have started self-medicating with alcohol when they can get it, drinking themselves into unconsciousness because it is the only way they can shut their brains off. This creates its own problems. Hangovers in the bunker are especially brutal. The dehydration combines with the poor air quality to produce headaches that feel like your skull is being compressed in a vice. Some people have stopped trying to sleep in their bunks entirely. You find them curled up in corners, in supply closets, in any small space where they can be alone with their thoughts. They say the communal sleeping room is too stressful. Too many people. Too much noise. They would rather sleep sitting up in a storage room than lie in a bunk surrounded by others. The hierarchy extends even to sleep. Hitler has his own bedroom, his own bed, his own space. The senior officers have private rooms, small as they are. You and the other lower ranks are stacked in communal rooms like cargo. This inequality is grating in ways that are hard to articulate. You are all trapped down here together. You are all facing the same fate. But some people face it in relative comfort while others face it pressed together in damp metal bunks. Morning, when it comes, is not announced by any natural phenomenon. There is no sunrise, no gradual lightening of the sky, just someone shaking you awake, telling you your shift is starting, pulling you from whatever inadequate rest you managed to achieve back into the grinding reality of another day in the bunker. You wake up more tired than when you went to sleep. Your body aches from the thin mattress and the metal frame. Your mouth tastes like the air in the bunker, stale and chemical. Your head hurts from poor sleep and oxygen deprivation. This is what passes for refreshed down here. You sit up. Your feet touch cold, wet concrete. Around you, other people are waking up, going through the same miserable morning routine. No one speaks. What is there to say? Another day in the tomb. Another rotation of the same desperate cycle. This is sleep in the bunker. It is not rest. It is not recovery. It is just the minimum biological shutdown required to keep your body functional for another shift of pointless activity in service of a regime that has already lost. Your body needs sleep. Your mind needs sleep. But sleep in this place is its own form of torture, offering no escape, no relief, just hours of uncomfortable semi-consciousness punctuated by anxiety and the constant background hum of machinery keeping you alive. Sweet dreams, if you can remember what those are. Chapter 7. Hygiene in Hell. Let us talk about staying clean. Or rather, let us talk about the impossibility of staying clean in an environment specifically designed to make hygiene optional at best and impossible at worst. The bathroom situation is a disaster. We touched on this before, but it deserves a deeper examination because nothing reveals the degradation of the bunker quite like its sanitation facilities. There are 2 toilets for dozens of people. 2. The toilets are standard porcelain fixtures connected to a sewage system that was not designed for continuous use. The system is failing. The pipes are backing up regularly, sending sewage flowing back into the bowls and sometimes onto the floor. The smell is beyond description. Imagine the worst public restroom you have ever encountered, multiply it by 10, add the stress of people with deteriorating digestive systems from bad food, and you begin to approach the reality. The toilets do not flush properly. You pull the handle and sometimes water comes. Sometimes it does not. Sometimes water comes, but it is brown and smells worse than what you are trying to flush away. The tank refills slowly when it refills at all, which means that if someone before you had a particularly difficult time, you are dealing with their leavings along with your own. There is a constant line for the bathrooms. You wait. You shift from foot to foot. You try not to think about what you are about to walk into. When your turn finally comes, you open the door to a scene that would make a medieval peasant recoil in disgust. The toilet bowl is stained dark brown and black from weeks of inadequate cleaning. The floor is wet with things you do not want to identify. The air is thick enough to chew. There is toilet paper, but it is rationed. Each person gets a small allotment per day. You learn to make it last. You learn to use less than you think you need. Some people have run out of their allotment and are reduced to using newspaper or scraps of paper from the endless forms and reports that no one needs anymore. Newspaper is rough. Ink transfers to skin. It is better than nothing, but not by much. The smell lingers. You finish your business as quickly as possible and flee the bathroom, but the smell comes with you. It is in your clothes, in your hair, on your skin. The bunker has its own distinct odor, and a significant component of that odor is sewage. Washing your hands is a challenge. There are sinks, yes, but the water pressure is inconsistent. Sometimes water trickles out. Sometimes nothing happens when you turn the tap. The water, when it comes, is cold. Always cold. There is no hot water in the public facilities. The soap situation is dire. There are a few bars of harsh lye soap that have been worn down to thin slivers. You rub your hands against the sliver and get maybe a hint of lather if you are lucky. The soap does not smell good. It does not leave your skin feeling clean. But it is technically soap, and technically soap is better than no soap. Drying your hands is impossible. There are no towels. No paper towels. You wipe your wet hands on your trousers and hope for the best. Your trousers are already damp from walking through the wet corridors, so adding more moisture barely makes a difference. Bathing is a luxury reserved for twice a week if you are lucky and if the water heater is functioning. The shower room has 2 shower heads. You are allotted 3 minutes. Someone with a watch stands outside and knocks on the door when your time is up. The water comes out cold more often than hot. The water heater runs on electricity from the generators, and the generators are being throttled back to conserve fuel. Cold showers in an already cold bunker are an exercise in controlled hypothermia. You strip down quickly. You step under the shower head. The water hits your skin like needles of ice. You gasp. Your muscles contract. You force yourself to wet your hair. Soap your body with the same harsh lye soap. Rinse as quickly as possible. 3 minutes is not enough time. You are still soapy when the knock comes. You have to choose between rinsing incompletely or arguing with the person outside who has their own shower to take. You rinse incompletely. You step out shivering, your skin covered in goosebumps, soap residue still clinging to your back and underarms. There are no towels. Or rather, there are a few towels, but they are damp from everyone else who used them before you and smell like mildew and body odor. You use your shirt to dry off. It is not effective. You put your clothes back on over still wet skin. The moisture soaks into the fabric. You walk back to your quarters feeling colder and damper than before you showered. Your hair never dries completely. The bunker is too humid. Your hair stays limp and slightly oily, picking up the smells of the bunker and holding them close to your scalp. Some people have stopped washing their hair entirely. It mats and clumps and starts to dreadlock naturally from the combination of sweat, oil, and neglect. Shaving is another challenge. The men down here are supposed to maintain military grooming standards, which means shaving regularly. But hot water for shaving is scarce. Shaving cream ran out weeks ago. They use soap instead, lathering their faces with the harsh lye soap that burns and irritates the skin. The razors are dull. They tug at the hair rather than cutting it cleanly. Men emerge from shaving sessions with nicks and cuts all over their faces. The cuts do not heal well in the damp air of the bunker. They get infected. Small wounds become angry red welts that weep pus and have to be treated with the dwindling supply of medical antiseptic. Some men have given up on shaving. They have weeks of beard growth now, scraggly and unkempt. The beards itch. They harbor food particles and smells. but they are easier than the daily torture of dragging a dull razor across skin with inadequate soap and cold water. The women in the bunker face their own hygiene challenges. Menstruation in a place with limited water and no proper facilities is a nightmare. There are a few nurses and secretaries and kitchen staff. They have to manage their periods with inadequate supplies, limited privacy, and the constant awareness that everyone knows what they are dealing with because there is no hiding anything in this compressed environment. Dental hygiene is failing across the board. There are toothbrushes but no toothpaste. People use soap or salt to brush their teeth. Some have stopped brushing entirely. You can see it in the way people's breath has become progressively worse. Conversations now happen with people standing slightly farther apart, trying to avoid the direct blast of each other's exhalations. Teeth are starting to rot. Gums are bleeding. Some people have developed abscesses, painful infections in their teeth and gums that the bunker doctor cannot properly treat. He gives them aspirin for the pain and tells them to rinse with salt water. It does not help much. You hear people moaning in their sleep, their faces swollen, the infection spreading. Lice have made an appearance. Body lice, head lice. They are spreading through the bunker population despite efforts to contain them. You feel them crawling on your scalp, in your clothing. You scratch until your skin is raw. There is a delousing station set up in one of the storage rooms, but the treatment is harsh and not particularly effective. You get sprayed with some kind of chemical powder that makes you cough and your eyes water. The lice come back within days. Infections are spreading. Small cuts and scrapes that would normally heal without issue are becoming infected in the damp, dirty conditions of the bunker. You see people with red streaks running up their arms from a small wound on their hand. Blood poisoning. Sepsis. The doctor does what he can with limited antibiotics, but supplies are running low. Fungal infections are epidemic. Athlete's foot. Jock itch. Every warm, moist fold of skin is a potential breeding ground for fungi that thrive in the bunker's conditions. People walk with a distinctive gait, their feet hurting from the raw, cracked skin between their toes. They scratch themselves constantly, making the infections worse. The constant dampness means nothing ever fully dries. Your socks are perpetually damp. Your underwear is damp. Your shirt collar is damp. This creates a perfect environment for bacteria and fungi to multiply. People are developing rashes, boils, and skin conditions that have no names but are universally miserable. Personal grooming has degraded to a minimal survival level. People do not care what they look like anymore. There are no mirrors in most of the bunker, which is probably for the best. The few mirrors that exist show gaunt faces with sunken eyes, greasy hair, and skin that has taken on a grayish pallor from weeks without sunlight. Some people have tried to maintain standards. They still shave. They still try to keep their uniforms as clean as possible. They still brush their teeth with salt. But they are fighting a losing battle. The bunker is winning. The filth is winning. The degradation is winning. You smell. Everyone smells. It is a mix of body odor, mildew, sewage, and something else. Something like decay, like flesh slowly breaking down. You have stopped noticing your own smell because you are immersed in it constantly. But when you pass someone in the corridor, you get a fresh blast of their particular blend of odors, and it reminds you that you smell just as bad to them. This is hygiene in the bunker. It is not cleanliness. It is not even basic sanitation. It is damage control. It is trying to prevent complete biological collapse long enough to make it to tomorrow. It is the slow realization that your body is degrading, that the veneer of civilization is peeling away layer by layer, that you are becoming a creature of filth and survival rather than a human being with dignity and self-respect. Welcome to hygiene in hell, where soap is a luxury, water is rationed, and everyone gradually transforms into a walking biological hazard, where the smell of your own body becomes your constant companion, where you stop caring what you look like because looking good has no survival value when you are just trying to make it through another day in this concrete sewer. Enjoy your shower, if you can call it that. Chapter 8. The ventilation system that keeps you barely alive. The ventilation system is your lifeline. It is also your tormentor. Let us talk about the machinery that makes survival in this sealed concrete tomb theoretically possible. The system consists of three main components: air intake vents on the surface, a filtration and processing unit in a mechanical room on the upper level, and distribution ducts that carry processed air to every room in the complex. In theory, this system should provide adequate fresh air for everyone. In practice, it is barely keeping up with the demands being placed on it. The intake vents are located in the Reich Chancellery Garden, camouflaged to look like natural landscape features. Soviet artillery has been pounding the area for weeks. Some of the vents have been damaged or buried under rubble. This reduces the amount of outside air entering the system, which means the same air is being recirculated more times than it should be. The air that does make it to the intake vents is not exactly fresh to begin with. Berlin is burning. The atmosphere above is full of smoke from fires, dust from collapsing buildings, and the chemical residue of thousands of explosions. All of this gets sucked into the ventilation system along with whatever oxygen is still available. The filtration unit is supposed to remove contaminants. It has activated charcoal filters designed to catch poison gas in case of a chemical attack. These filters are effective at catching certain kinds of airborne particles. They are less effective at removing smoke, dust, and the general miasma of a city in its death throes. The filters need to be changed regularly. They have not been changed in weeks. The quartermaster responsible for ventilation system maintenance keeps requesting new filters, but new filters are not coming. The supply lines are cut. The stockpiles are exhausted. The filters currently installed are clogged and degraded, barely functioning, but they are all you have. The processing unit includes a blower system powered by the electrical generators. The blowers are large fan assemblies that force air through the ducts and into the living spaces. They are loud, as you have noticed. They run constantly, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They were not designed for this level of continuous operation. They are beginning to fail. You can hear it in the sound they make. What was once a steady hum is now punctuated by rattles, grinding noises, and occasional shrieks of metal on metal. The maintenance crew services them as best they can, but parts are scarce. They cannibalize broken equipment to keep the essential systems running. It is a race against entropy, and entropy is winning. The distribution ducts run through the walls and ceilings like arteries. They are narrow metal tubes, maybe 12 inches in diameter, that carry air from the central processing unit to vents in each room. The ducts were supposed to be sealed and airtight. They are not anymore. Constant vibration from artillery bombardment has loosened joints, creating leaks where air escapes before it reaches its destination. The vents themselves are simple grills set into the walls near the ceiling. Air flows out in weak streams that barely disturb the stale atmosphere in the rooms below. You stand under a vent and feel a slight breeze, a hint of movement in the otherwise dead air. It is not refreshing. It is just less stagnant than the alternative. Air pressure in the bunker is supposed to be maintained at slightly above atmospheric pressure. This positive pressure helps keep contaminants from seeping in through cracks and damaged seals. But maintaining pressure requires the system to work perfectly. The system is not working perfectly. Pressure fluctuates throughout the day as different parts of the system struggle and fail. You feel these pressure changes in your ears. They pop unexpectedly as pressure differentials equalize. Sometimes your ears stay blocked for hours, giving you a muffled underwater sensation that adds to the general sense of disconnection from reality. People yawn constantly, trying to clear their ears, trying to find some relief from the pressure. The mechanical room where all this equipment lives is off-limits to most personnel. Only the maintenance crew is allowed in there. But you have seen inside once, and the sight was not reassuring. The room is cramped, hot, and filled with machinery that is barely holding together. Wires wrapped in electrical tape, pipes sealed with improvised gaskets, fan blades that wobble as they spin. It looks like a system on the verge of catastrophic failure. The maintenance crew works around the clock to keep everything running. They are exhausted, running on caffeine substitute and desperation. They know that if the ventilation system fails completely, everyone in the bunker will suffocate within hours. The carbon dioxide from all those breathing bodies will accumulate. The oxygen will be consumed. Death will come in the form of progressively deeper sleep until you simply do not wake up. This knowledge weighs on them. You can see it in their faces, the understanding that dozens of lives depend on their ability to keep ancient machinery functioning with no spare parts and diminishing resources. Some of them have stopped sleeping entirely, afraid that if they take their eyes off the equipment for even a few hours, something critical will fail. The temperature control portion of the system has already failed. The bunker was supposed to maintain a comfortable temperature year-round. Instead, it is cold, perpetually cold. The damp concrete sucks heat from the air faster than the minimal heating elements can replace it. People wear multiple layers of clothing indoors. You can see your breath in some of the less frequently used rooms. Humidity control is also non-functional. The air is too humid in some areas, too dry in others. The humidity condenses on cold concrete surfaces, creating the constant moisture that makes everything feel damp and clammy. In the drier areas, static electricity builds up, giving you shocks when you touch metal surfaces. It is a small thing, but it adds to the general misery. The noise of the ventilation system is a constant psychological pressure. The hum and rattle of the machinery never stops. You cannot escape it. Penetrates into your sleep, your conversations, your thoughts. It becomes the background noise of your existence. A mechanical heartbeat that reminds you constantly that you are dependent on this aging infrastructure for every breath. Sometimes the system makes sounds that are not mechanical. You hear things moving in the ducts, scratching, scurrying. The rats have discovered that the ventilation system provides convenient highways through the bunker. They live in the ducts, breeding in the darkness, emerging through vents to scavenge for food. You lie in your bunk at night and hear them scrambling overhead, their claws clicking against the metal, their bodies thumping as they navigate the narrow passages. The crew has tried to clear the rats out of the ventilation system. They set traps. They poison bait stations. But the rats are winning. For every one they catch, 3 more appear. The rats have adapted to bunker life faster than the humans have. They thrive in the darkness and damp. They reproduce with alarming speed. They are becoming a serious health hazard, contaminating the air with their droppings and the decomposing bodies of rats that die in the ducts and cannot be reached for removal. The smell of dead rats is distinctive. It is sweet and rotten at the same time, with an underlying sharpness that makes your stomach turn. When a rat dies in a duct near your room, you smell it for days or weeks until decomposition is complete. There is nothing you can do except breathe through your mouth and try not to gag. Air quality varies dramatically depending on where you are in the bunker. Hitler's personal suite has the best air, pumped through additional filters and delivered by a dedicated circuit. The common areas have middling air quality. The storage rooms and maintenance areas have the worst air, stale and oxygen depleted, and full of dust from supplies and equipment. You learn to recognize the signs of poor air quality. Headaches, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, irritability. These symptoms come and go as you move through different parts of the bunker. When you enter a room with particularly bad air, you feel the change immediately. Your head starts to pound. Your thinking slows. You feel an overwhelming urge to leave, to get back to a space where breathing is slightly less of a chore. Carbon monoxide from the generators is a concern. The generators burn diesel fuel and produce exhaust that is supposed to be vented outside. But the exhaust system, like everything else, is not functioning optimally. Some carbon monoxide is leaking into the bunker air. The levels are not immediately lethal, but chronic exposure is causing headaches, nausea, and a general feeling of illness that everyone attributes to stress but might actually be low-level poisoning. There are carbon monoxide detectors in the mechanical spaces, but they have not been calibrated in months. No one is entirely sure if they are still functional. This uncertainty hangs over everything. Are you being slowly poisoned by invisible gas? Is the air killing you in ways you cannot detect? There is no way to know for certain. The ventilation system is a daily reminder of how fragile your survival is. Every breath depends on machinery that is failing. Every moment depends on technicians who are working beyond the limits of human endurance to keep that machinery functioning. It is a house of cards built on desperation and held together with improvised repairs. And yet, the system keeps running. Against all odds, against all reasonable expectations, it continues to pull air from the ruined surface and push it down into this tomb. It is not good air. It is not healthy air. But it is air, and air is life, and for now that is enough. This is the ventilation system that keeps you barely alive. It hums and rattles and struggles and leaks and occasionally fills the air with the smell of dead rats. It is the machine that breathes for the bunker, that allows this sealed environment to sustain human life despite every factor working against it. Love it or hate it, you depend on it absolutely. And it is dying slowly but surely, just like everything else down here. Chapter 9. The water problem. Water is everywhere and nowhere. The bunker is damp. Moisture runs down the walls. The floors are perpetually wet. And yet clean, drinkable water is becoming a serious problem. The primary water source is a cistern built into the bunker complex during construction. It is a large concrete tank, several thousand gallons capacity, that was filled before the bunker was sealed for continuous occupation. This cistern was supposed to provide enough water for months of normal use. Normal use turned out to be a fantasy. There are more people in the bunker than planned. Water consumption is higher than estimated. And the cistern itself has issues that no one fully understood until it was too late to address them. The water in the cistern is stagnant. It has been sitting in a sealed concrete tank for weeks with minimal circulation. This creates an environment where bacteria and algae can grow. The water has developed a taste. It is hard to describe precisely. Metallic, slightly sour, with an underlying biological flavor that suggests things are living in it that should not be. The cistern water is used for everything: drinking, cooking, washing, flushing toilets. There is no other source. Above ground, the Berlin water system has been destroyed by bombardment. There are no working pipes delivering fresh water to the Reich Chancellery. The cistern is all you have. Drinking the cistern water is an exercise in suppressing your gag reflex. You pour a cup from the tap and look at it. The water is not completely clear. It has a faint cloudiness, tiny particles suspended in it that could be anything: concrete dust, rust from the pipes, biological matter. You do not examine it too closely. You drink it warm because there is no refrigeration. Warm, metallic-tasting water with an aftertaste that lingers in your mouth long after you swallow. You drink it because your body needs water to function. You drink it knowing that whatever is in this water is now in your body, circulating through your bloodstream, being processed by your kidneys. Some people have gotten sick from the water. Digestive problems, diarrhea, vomiting. In an environment where bathroom facilities are already inadequate, this creates cascading problems. People who are sick need more water to stay hydrated. They use more toilet paper. They spend more time in the bathrooms. The system strains even further. The doctor suspects the water is contaminated but has no way to test it properly. He recommends boiling water before drinking, but boiling requires fuel for the stoves in the kitchen. Fuel is rationed for food preparation. There is not enough to boil every cup of drinking water. So people take their chances with unboiled water and hope their immune systems can handle whatever microorganisms are multiplying in the cistern. The cistern has a fill port that connects to the surface through a pipe. In theory, the cistern could be refilled if the pipe was still functional and if there was a water source to draw from. In practice, the pipe has been damaged by artillery bombardment and the surface water system is destroyed anyway. There will be no refilling. The water you have is the water you get. You can measure the decline. Someone with access to the cistern room has been marking the water level on the concrete wall. The marks descend week by week, a visual countdown to the moment when the cistern runs dry. At current consumption rates, there is maybe 3 weeks of water left. Maybe less. Water rationing has been implemented but not consistently enforced. Important people still get as much water as they want. Hitler bathes regularly in clean cistern water. Eva Braun washes her hair. The senior staff drink their fill. Meanwhile, the lower ranks are told to minimize consumption, to share water, to make do with less. The inequality is maddening. You watch someone pour out half a cup of water because it tastes bad while you are trying to make a single cup last all morning. You watch water being used to wash someone's personal laundry while your own clothes are stiff with weeks of accumulated sweat and grime. The unfairness of it compounds the stress of everything else. Washing with cistern water is its own challenge. The water does not lather soap well. Something in its chemistry or composition interferes with the soap's ability to form suds. You rub soap on your hands, add water, and get minimal lather. Rinsing is equally frustrating. The water leaves a residue on your skin, a slight sticky feeling that never quite goes away. Cooking with cistern water means every meal tastes faintly of the water's distinctive flavor. Soup made with cistern water has that metallic tang underneath whatever other flavors the cook tries to add. Tea tastes like tin. Even when you boil the water for cooking, the taste remains baked into every dish. The pipes that distribute water from the cistern are failing. They are old, corroded, and leaking in multiple places. Water pressure is inconsistent. Sometimes water flows from the taps. Sometimes it is just a trickle. Sometimes nothing comes out at all and you have to wait for pressure to build up again. The leaks are creating their own problems. Water is seeping out of the distribution pipes and into the concrete structure of the bunker. This adds to the dampness, creates puddles in low-lying areas, and contributes to the general feeling that the bunker is slowly becoming a submarine taking on water. The maintenance crew tries to patch the leaks, but new ones appear as fast as they fix the old ones. The vibration from constant artillery bombardment loosens joints and cracks pipes. The corrosion from years of water exposure weakens the metal. The system is degrading faster than it can be repaired. In some of the storage rooms, water has pooled on the floor to depths of several inches. You wade through it, your boots squelching, knowing that this water represents a resource being wasted while the cistern level drops daily. But there is no way to collect it and return it to the system. It just sits there, evaporating slowly, adding to the humidity. The water for the toilets comes from the same cistern. Every flush uses water that could have been used for drinking or cooking. But stopping toilet flushing is not an option unless everyone wants the sanitation situation to become even worse than it already is. So water continues to be flushed down drains, sent into a sewage system that barely works, lost forever. Some people have started hoarding water in their personal spaces. Bottles, canteens, any container that can hold liquid is being filled and hidden. This is technically against regulations. Water is supposed to be shared communally, but regulations mean less and less as the situation deteriorates. People are taking care of themselves because they no longer trust the system to take care of them. The water theft creates tensions, accusations, paranoia. Someone's canteen goes missing and they immediately suspect everyone around them. A bottle of hoarded water is discovered and confiscated, leading to arguments about fairness and survival. The social fabric is fraying, and water is one of the threads being pulled. Rainwater is theoretically available if it could be collected on the surface. But going to the surface to set up collection systems is increasingly dangerous. Soviet forces are so close now that any above-ground activity draws immediate fire. The few times people have tried to venture out to collect rainwater, they have either been driven back by artillery or have brought back water so contaminated with ash and debris that it was unusable. There is talk of rationing water more strictly, implementing a daily allowance per person with no exceptions. But implementing this would require enforcement mechanisms that do not exist. Who is going to tell Hitler that he gets the same water ration as a typist? Who is going to monitor every cup poured and every toilet flushed? The practical difficulties make strict rationing impossible. Instead, there is an informal understanding that everyone should use less water. This works to varying degrees. Some people take it seriously, minimizing their consumption, skipping washes, enduring thirst. Others ignore it entirely, taking what they want when they want it. The result is that water consumption remains dangerously high while people argue about who is and is not doing their part. The psychological impact of water scarcity is profound. Water is such a basic need, such a fundamental requirement for life, that threatening it creates a level of stress that pervades everything. You think about water constantly. How much you have drunk today, how much is left, how long it will last. The calculations run in the background of your mind, a constant anxious computation. Thirst is becoming a default state. You are always slightly thirsty now, your body craving more water than you are allowing yourself to consume. Your mouth is dry, your lips are cracked, your tongue feels thick and coated. Drinking the limited amount you permit yourself provides only temporary relief before the thirst returns. Dehydration is starting to show in subtle ways. Your urine is darker than it should be. Your skin has lost some of its elasticity. You feel lightheaded when you stand up too quickly. These are warning signs that your body is not getting enough water. But there is nothing you can do except ration more carefully and hope the situation improves before serious medical issues develop. The water problem is a countdown, just like the food problem, just like the air quality problem. Everything in the bunker is a race against depletion. Resources are finite. Consumption continues. The mathematics are simple and brutal. At some point, the cistern will run dry. And then what? No one has an answer. No one wants to think about it. But everyone knows. In 3 weeks, maybe less, there will be no more water. And a human can only survive 3 or 4 days without water. After that, organs start to shut down. Consciousness fades. Death comes relatively quickly. This is the water problem in the bunker. You are surrounded by moisture but dying of thirst. You have access to water that is making you sick. You watch the supply dwindle while being unable to do anything to replenish it. You drink, and every swallow is a reminder that the glass is not just half empty but actively draining. Welcome to water scarcity in a sealed concrete tomb. Enjoy your metallic tasting, biologically contaminated, rapidly depleting supply. And try not to think about what happens when the last drop is consumed. Chapter 10. Medical Care in the Depths. The medical station is a converted storage room that smells like antiseptic struggling to mask something worse. This is where you go when your body fails you, which is happening with increasing frequency to everyone in the bunker. The doctor is a middle-aged man who was trained as a battlefield surgeon. He is good at his job, or he was when he had proper facilities, adequate supplies, and patients whose problems could be solved with stitches and bandages. Down here, he is a specialist trying to practice general medicine in conditions that would make a medieval barber surgeon weep. His examination table is a converted desk, narrow and hard, covered with a sheet that is changed when sheets are available, which they usually are not. His medical cabinet is a repurposed filing cabinet with 3 drawers. The top drawer contains bandages, gauze, and surgical tape. The middle drawer contains the few medications he has left. The bottom drawer contains surgical instruments that he sterilizes by boiling in the kitchen when he can spare the water and fuel. His supply of medications is critically low. He has some aspirin left, rationed carefully for the most severe pain cases. He has a small amount of sulfa drugs for infections, but not nearly enough to treat all the infected wounds and illnesses developing in the bunker. He has some sedatives and sleeping pills, but these are reserved for psychiatric emergencies, and he is the sole arbiter of what constitutes an emergency. He has no antibiotics beyond the sulfa drugs. Penicillin exists in the outside world, but not down here. Infections that would be easily treatable with modern antibiotics are becoming life-threatening conditions. You watch people deteriorate from simple cuts that become infected, the infection spreading up their arms or legs in red streaks that mark the progress of blood poisoning. The most common complaints are stress-related. Headaches from the poor air quality and constant tension. Digestive issues from the inadequate diet and contaminated water. Sleep disturbances from the impossible schedule and psychological pressure. The doctor can offer aspirin for headaches, advice for digestive problems, and nothing at all for sleep except the suggestion to try to relax, which is darkly comic given the circumstances. Respiratory infections are spreading. The recycled air, the close quarters, and the weakened immune systems are creating perfect conditions for viruses and bacteria to circulate. People are coughing constantly, a wet, productive cough that produces phlegm in shades of yellow and green. The doctor knows these infections could progress to pneumonia but has limited treatment options. He tells people to rest, drink fluids, and hope their bodies can fight it off. Skin infections are epidemic. The combination of poor hygiene, damp conditions, and close contact has created an outbreak of various bacterial and fungal infections. People come to him with boils, abscesses, rashes, and lesions that are getting worse despite his attempts to treat them. He lances boils with a scalpel he boils between patients. He prescribes rest and cleanliness, both of which are impossible to achieve. Dental problems are beyond his ability to treat. He is not a dentist. He has no dental equipment. When someone comes to him with a raging toothache or an abscessed tooth, the best he can do is offer aspirin and suggest they rinse with salt water. If the infection is severe enough, he might attempt to extract the tooth, but he has no local anesthetic beyond alcohol, and pulling teeth without proper anesthetic is a barbaric process that both he and the patient would rather avoid. Malnutrition is starting to show in everyone. The diet of potatoes, cabbage, and canned meat is nutritionally inadequate. People are developing deficiencies, bleeding gums and loose teeth from scurvy, muscle weakness and fatigue from lack of protein and calories, skin problems from vitamin deficiencies. The doctor recognizes these symptoms but cannot treat them effectively without better food, which does not exist. Psychiatric problems are overwhelming. People are breaking down mentally at an increasing rate. Panic attacks where someone suddenly cannot breathe, their heart racing, convinced they are dying. Depressive episodes where people cannot get out of their bunks, lying motionless for hours, unresponsive to attempts to rouse them. Paranoid delusions where people become convinced that others are plotting against them. The doctor has limited ability to address these mental health crises. He can prescribe sedatives to calm acute episodes, but sedatives do not treat the underlying causes, which are the intolerable conditions of bunker life. He can talk to people, offer reassurance, try to counsel them through their breakdowns. But what can he say? Everything will be okay. It will not. Just hold on a little longer. For what purpose? The platitudes ring hollow even as he speaks them. Suicide is a growing concern. Several people have attempted to kill themselves. One succeeded. The doctor found the body in a storage room, hanging from a pipe, dead for hours before being discovered. He cut the body down, documented the death, and moved on because what else could he do? Grieving is a luxury no one can afford. The doctor knows more attempts will come. He watches for warning signs: withdrawal from social contact, giving away possessions, sudden calm after periods of agitation. But in an environment where everyone is withdrawn, where no one has possessions worth keeping, where mood swings are constant, these warning signs are nearly universal. Injuries from the physical environment are common. People slipping on wet concrete and twisting ankles or wrists. People bumping their heads on low ceilings or door frames in the dim light. People cutting themselves on the sharp edges of equipment and furniture. These minor injuries would be trivial in a normal environment. Down here, they can become serious problems if they get infected. The doctor treats these injuries with his dwindling supplies of bandages and antiseptic. He cleans wounds with alcohol when he has it, with boiled water when he does not. He wraps sprains and strains and tells people to elevate and rest, knowing they cannot rest because they have shifts to work and duties to perform. Sexual health is not discussed but is a concern nonetheless. There are men and women living in close quarters under extreme stress. Relationships develop. Physical intimacy happens. The doctor has a small supply of prophylactics but no treatment for sexually transmitted infections if they occur. He hopes people are being careful but knows that hope is not a contraceptive method. Pregnancies would be a disaster. The bunker is no place to carry a child, no place to give birth, no place to raise an infant. The doctor has quietly advised the women that if there is any chance of pregnancy, they should speak with him immediately. He has the means to end a pregnancy if necessary, though it is dangerous without proper facilities and anesthesia. This is not a conversation he wants to have, but in this environment, it is a conversation that must be ready to happen. Hitler himself requires regular medical attention. He has Parkinson's disease, though that diagnosis is not publicly acknowledged. His tremors are worsening. His movements are increasingly uncoordinated. His personal physician, Theodore Morel, treats him with a cocktail of medications that may be doing more harm than good. The bunker doctor does not have access to Hitler's medical records or treatment plans, but he observes from a distance and worries about the stability of a man whose neurology is failing while he makes life and death decisions for everyone. The medical waste has no proper disposal method. Used bandages, needles, surgical waste, All of it goes into a bucket that is supposed to be incinerated but cannot be because there is no incinerator. Instead, it accumulates in bags in a corner of the storage room, a biohazard waiting to cause more problems. The doctor keeps meticulous records of every patient, every treatment, every outcome. He fills out forms in triplicate as if proper documentation matters when the world is ending. Perhaps it gives him a sense of order. Perhaps he imagines these records will be useful to future doctors, assuming there is a future and doctors to read them. Or perhaps it is just habit, the trained response of a medical professional who cannot quite let go of the routines that define his profession. At night, the doctor sits alone in his small office adjacent to the medical station. He reviews his dwindling supplies. He makes calculations about who will get the remaining medications and who will have to do without. He is making triage decisions for an entire population trapped in a dying bunker. There are no good choices, only impossible ones. He drinks when he can get alcohol, not for pleasure, for oblivion, for a few hours of not thinking about the person whose tooth infection he cannot properly treat, for a few hours of not worrying about the spreading respiratory illness, for a few hours of escape from the knowledge that he is watching dozens of people deteriorate physically and mentally, and there is almost nothing he can do to stop it. This is medical care in the depths. It is battlefield medicine without the battlefield. It is emergency care without the emergency room. It is one exhausted doctor doing his best with resources that are completely inadequate to meet the needs of his patients. It is the slow collapse of healthcare in a miniature society that is itself collapsing. If you get sick down here, the doctor will try to help you. He will give you aspirin if he has it. He will clean your wounds. He will listen to your concerns. But he cannot save you. He can only delay the inevitable, make you slightly more comfortable, and document your decline with the same methodical care he would give to any other hopeless case. Welcome to the medical station, where the medicine is running out, the doctor is running on empty, and everyone is slowly breaking down in ways that cannot be fixed with the contents of a filing cabinet and a converted desk. Where healing is replaced with harm reduction, where treatment is replaced with triage, and where hope is the one medication that ran out weeks ago. Enjoy your aspirin while it lasts. Welcome to the social structure of the bunker. It is a microcosm of the Third Reich itself, compressed into a concrete box where rank matters more than ever because rank determines everything from the air you breathe to the food you eat to whether you live or die. At the top sits Hitler. He occupies the best rooms. He gets the best air. He eats food that is actually prepared with care rather than thrown together from whatever is left in the stores. His personal staff caters to his every need, no matter how bizarre or demanding. He sleeps when he wants, wakes when he wants, and everyone else's schedule revolves around his whims. You see him occasionally, shuffling through the corridors, his left arm hanging useless, his right hand trembling. He is surrounded by a protective bubble of yes-men and bodyguards. No one makes eye contact unless spoken to. No one questions his orders, no matter how divorced from reality they become. He is the center of gravity around which this entire doomed enterprise rotates. Eva Braun occupies a strange position in the hierarchy. She is Hitler's companion but not officially acknowledged. She has private quarters but limited actual power. The senior staff treat her with respect that is tinged with condescension. She is important because Hitler says she is important, but strip away his protection and she is just another civilian trapped underground with the rest of you. Below Hitler and Eva come the senior officers. Generals, advisors, the inner circle of decision-makers. They have private rooms, though small ones. They attend the daily briefings where strategies are discussed and orders are issued. They eat slightly better food and drink the hoarded alcohol. They pretend they are still in command of something, that their decisions matter, that there is still a war to be won. You watch these men argue in the conference room, their voices rising and falling as they debate tactics for armies that no longer exist. They move pins on maps and issue orders to units that have either been destroyed or have stopped responding to communications. They are playing a game of military strategy where the pieces have all been swept off the board, but they continue moving invisible markers anyway. The rivalries among the senior staff are intense. Everyone is jockeying for position, trying to be the last one standing when the music stops. They undermine each other in subtle ways, spreading rumors, withholding information, sabotaging rival initiatives. The fact that there is nowhere left to rise to, no positions of power that mean anything anymore, does not stop them. They scheme because it is what they know how to do. The secretaries and adjutants occupy the middle tier. They have some privileges, but not many. They work long hours managing the endless paperwork that the bureaucracy continues to generate despite its complete irrelevance. They take dictation, type reports, file documents that no one will ever read. They exist to serve the senior staff and to feel superior to the people below them. These secretaries move through the bunker with a particular kind of harried efficiency. They always seem to be carrying papers, always rushing from one room to another, always stressed about deadlines that mean nothing. Some of them are true believers, still convinced that the Reich will somehow prevail. Others are going through the motions because what else can they do? A few have started to crack, their eyes showing the strain of maintaining the fiction that any of this matters. The kitchen staff and maintenance workers are below the secretaries in the hierarchy but more essential to actual survival. The cook keeps everyone fed with whatever he can scrounge. The electricians keep the lights on and the generators running. The plumbers fight the losing battle against the failing sewage system. These are the people who do the work that keeps the bunker functional, and yet they are treated as second-class citizens by the administrative staff who would not last a day without them. You occupy one of the lowest rungs. You are a message runner, a file clerk, a general laborer who does whatever you are told. You have no private space. You eat the worst food. You sleep in a communal bunk room. You are essentially invisible to anyone above you in the hierarchy unless they need something, at which point you materialize, perform your function, and disappear again. The treatment you receive varies wildly depending on who is giving you orders. Some of the senior staff are polite, acknowledging your existence with a nod or a brief word of thanks. Others treat you like you are a piece of furniture that happens to be mobile. They snap orders without looking at you, criticize your work without justification, and blame you for failures that have nothing to do with your actions. The hierarchy extends to resource allocation in ways that are both official and unofficial. Officially, there are rations and rules. Everyone is supposed to get the same amount of food, the same access to facilities. Unofficially, important people get more and better. Hitler gets fresh bread. You get moldy crusts. Senior officers get hot showers. You get 3 minutes of lukewarm water twice a week if you are lucky. The unfairness breeds resentment. You watch someone throw away half a meal while you are still hungry after finishing your full ration. You watch someone complain about the quality of their coffee substitute while you are grateful to have anything hot to drink at all. The gap between the haves and have-nots is small in absolute terms. Everyone is suffering, but it is enormous in psychological terms. There are attempts at camaraderie among the lower ranks. You bond with the other message runners, the other clerks, the other people who share your status. You joke quietly about the absurdity of the situation. You share what little you have. You look out for each other because no one else will. These relationships are the only source of genuine human warmth in the bunker, small islands of solidarity in a sea of hierarchy and dysfunction. The guards are a special category. They are SS troops, loyal to Hitler personally, charged with maintaining security and order. They patrol the corridors with weapons that seem absurd in this confined space. What are they guarding against? Escape is impossible. There is nowhere to go except up into a battlefield. Their presence is a reminder that even here, even at the end, force and the threat of violence underpin the entire structure. The guards enforce the rules with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Some take their duties seriously, stopping anyone who is in the wrong area at the wrong time, demanding papers, questioning purposes. Others have given up caring, waving people through checkpoints without looking, more interested in staying warm than maintaining security protocols. Discipline is supposed to be absolute. There are regulations for everything. When to wake, when to sleep, where to be and when, what to wear, how to speak to superiors. The punishments for violation range from extra duties to confinement to, in theory, execution. But enforcement is breaking down along with everything else. The guards are tired. The officers are distracted. The whole machinery of military discipline is grinding to a halt. Small infractions that would have resulted in severe punishment weeks ago now pass without comment. Someone shows up late to their shift. Someone is drunk on duty. Someone talks back to a superior. Nothing happens. Or rather, nothing happens until someone decides to make an example, at which point the punishment is disproportionate and arbitrary, designed more to remind everyone that the hierarchy still exists than to address the actual infraction. Sexual relationships are developing despite regulations against fraternization. In an environment this stressful, where death feels imminent, people seek comfort and connection however they can find it. You hear about secretaries and officers, guards and kitchen staff, people finding moments of intimacy in storage rooms and in used corridors. The relationships are desperate, urgent, fueled more by the need to feel something other than fear than by genuine affection. The hierarchy tries to regulate these relationships but cannot. Love, or whatever passes for it in this environment, does not respect rank. The official disapproval creates a subculture of secrecy, meetings arranged in whispered conversations, trysts scheduled during shift changes. Everyone knows what is happening. No one talks about it openly. There are also power dynamics that are darker. People in positions of authority making demands of those below them. Threats implicit in requests. The promise of extra food or better assignments in exchange for favors. This is not widespread, but it exists, another form of exploitation in a place built on exploitation. You learn to navigate the hierarchy through a combination of obedience and invisibility. You follow orders quickly and without question. You do not draw attention to yourself. You do not complain, at least not where anyone important can hear you. You maintain the fiction that your superiors are competent and their decisions are wise, even when evidence to the contrary is overwhelming. The meetings that happen in Hitler's suite are the ultimate expression of hierarchical power. Senior staff are summoned. They file in nervously, knowing that Hitler's moods are unpredictable and his reactions can be explosive. They present information, knowing that bad news might be met with screaming accusations of betrayal. They watch each other, looking for signs of who is rising and who is falling in the leader's estimation. Hitler's rages during these meetings are legendary. He screams about cowardice, about incompetence, about the German people failing to live up to his vision. He pounds the table. He throws papers. His face turns red and veins bulge in his neck. And then, as quickly as it started, the rage dissipates, replaced by a quiet melancholy or a distant stare at maps that no longer represent reality. The people who emerge from these meetings are shaken. Some go immediately to find alcohol. Some sit alone, processing what they just experienced. Some turn their stress into anger and take it out on their subordinates, perpetuating a cycle of abuse that flows downward through the hierarchy like water finding the lowest level. At the very bottom of the hierarchy, below even you, are the occasional prisoners or suspected deserters who are brought into the bunker for questioning. They are kept in storage rooms that serve as makeshift cells. You hear them sometimes, through the walls, pleading or praying or just weeping. You do not know what happens to them. You do not ask. Knowing would not help you and might make you a liability. The hierarchy is fracturing as conditions deteriorate. The bonds of military discipline and Nazi ideology that held this structure together are dissolving. People are starting to think about survival rather than duty. They are hoarding resources. They are making plans for what comes after, assuming there is an after. The edifice of command and obedience is still standing, but it is hollow, ready to collapse at the first real test. This is the hierarchy of the damned, where your worth is measured by your proximity to a dying dictator, where privilege is relative and everyone is suffering, just some are suffering with slightly better bread, where the social structure mirrors the military structure mirrors the ideological structure, all of them built on foundations that are crumbling into dust. You are near the bottom. You take orders from people who take orders from people who take orders from a man whose grip on reality is failing. And somehow, this insane pyramid of power persists, even here, even now, even as the walls are literally closing in. Welcome to the society of the bunker. Mind your place, know your rank, and never forget that in a hierarchy built on madness, everyone is losing, just at different rates. Chapter 12. Living with constant danger. The artillery never stops. That is the first thing you need to understand about danger in the bunker. The Soviet bombardment is constant, rhythmic, relentless. You feel every impact as a tremor through the concrete. You see dust sift down from the ceiling with each nearby hit. You watch the lights flicker and pray they come back on. The bunker was designed to withstand direct hits from heavy bombs. The engineers calculated the forces involved, specified the thickness of concrete and steel reinforcement required. They tested the designs. They certified the structure as safe. Those engineers are either dead or somewhere else now, and you are the one testing whether their calculations were correct. So far, the bunker has held. But held is not the same as undamaged. Cracks are appearing in the walls. Hairline fractures at first, barely visible, but growing wider with each passing day. You trace them with your fingers, feeling the rough edges where concrete has split. You wonder how wide these cracks can get before the structural integrity fails completely. Water seeps through some of the cracks. Not from rain but from burst pipes and ruptured water mains on the surface. The water runs down the walls in dark streaks, carrying with it dirt and debris and possibly sewage from the shattered city above. It pools on the floor, adding to the dampness, creating new hazards in the form of slippery surfaces and potential electrical shorts. The ceiling is the main concern. 12 feet of reinforced concrete between you and the battlefield. You lie in your bunk at night and stare up at that concrete, watching it flex minutely with each impact, seeing particles of dust drift down in the dim light. You calculate in your head. How many hits can it take? How much explosive force? What are the odds that the next shell will be the one that breaks through? There have been close calls. 3 days ago, a heavy shell hit directly above the map room. The impact was deafening even through all that concrete. The lights went out. People screamed. Dust filled the air so thick you could not see your hand in front of your face. And then the emergency lights came on, revealing a new crack in the ceiling, this one wider than the others, with debris hanging loose from the wound in the concrete. The maintenance crew inspected it immediately. They declared it stable. They propped it with timber supports as a precaution. But everyone who works in that room now glances up frequently, watching that crack, waiting for it to widen, imagining the moment when tons of concrete give way and the room is crushed flat with everyone in it. The threat is not just overhead. Soviet forces are fighting through Berlin street by street. The sounds of combat penetrate the bunker. Machine gun fire, sharp and rapid. The heavier thump of tank cannons. The occasional grenade explosion. You hear these sounds and mentally map where the fighting is. How close, how fast it is approaching. The guards monitor the situation through radio reports and the few telephone lines still functioning. They track Soviet advances on maps, marking positions with grease pencil. You watch those marks creep closer. A mile away, half a mile, a quarter mile. The Reich Chancellery itself is within artillery range, probably within direct fire range from tanks. It is only a matter of time before Soviet infantry try to storm the building. The plan for if the bunker is breached is unclear. There are supposed to be defensive positions, weapons stockpiles, escape routes, but when you ask questions, the answers are vague. The guards look uncomfortable. The officers change the subject. You get the distinct impression that there is no real plan, or that the plan is so clearly doomed to fail that no one wants to discuss it. You have seen the weapons stored in one of the supply rooms. Rifles, submachine guns, grenades. Enough to arm everyone in the bunker. But what good are rifles against tanks? Against artillery? Against an army that has fought its way across half of Europe and is not going to be stopped by a few dozen desperate defenders firing from a concrete box. Gas attack is a constant fear. Chemical weapons. The Germans used them in World War I. The Soviets might use them now. The bunker has filtration systems designed to handle gas, but as we have discussed, those systems are failing. If gas gets pumped into the air intakes, the filters might not catch it all. You might die choking on mustard gas or nerve agent without ever seeing the enemy. There are gas masks stored in various locations. You have been issued one. It is an ancient design, rubber and glass, and a filter canister that might or might not still be effective. You are supposed to keep it within reach at all times. Most people have stopped bothering. Where would you put it? You have no personal storage space. Carrying it everywhere is impractical. So it sits on a shelf somewhere, gathering dust, waiting for an emergency that will probably come too fast for you to react anyway. Fire is another danger. If an incendiary shell or a firebomb penetrates the bunker, there is limited ability to fight it. There are fire extinguishers, but not many. The water supply is too precious to use for firefighting. If a serious fire started, it would consume oxygen at a terrifying rate in this sealed environment. You would suffocate from smoke inhalation long before you burn to death. The electrical system is vulnerable. A fire in the generator room would be catastrophic. No generators means no ventilation, no lights, no water pumps. The bunker would become a pitch-black tomb within minutes. People would panic in the darkness. They would consume the available oxygen faster. Some would try to reach the exits and get crushed in the stampede. It would be chaos and death. The generators themselves are dangerous. They burn diesel fuel, producing carbon monoxide that is supposed to be vented outside. But if the ventilation system fails or if the generators are damaged, that carbon monoxide could back up into the living spaces. Carbon monoxide is invisible, odorless, and deadly. You would feel drowsy, lie down for what you think is a nap, and never wake up. There is an emergency exit at the far end of the complex. A staircase leading up through concrete to a disguised hatch in the garden. This exit is supposed to be for evacuations. But everyone knows that using it is suicide. The garden is under constant observation by Soviet spotters. The area is targeted by artillery. Anyone emerging from that hatch would be cut down within seconds. The main entrance is equally vulnerable. It is a staircase from the bunker up into the Reich Chancellery basement. The Chancellery itself is being shelled regularly. Parts of it are on fire. The structure is collapsing. The staircase might already be blocked by rubble. Even if it is clear, trying to evacuate through a building that is actively being destroyed is not much better than using the emergency exit. You are trapped. The dangers outside are immediate and overwhelming. The dangers inside are slower but just as deadly. The bunker protects you from shells and bullets, but it cannot protect you from starvation, dehydration, suffocation, disease, or the psychological collapse that comes from being sealed in concrete while the world above tears itself apart. Accidents are increasing. People are exhausted, sleep-deprived, malnourished. They make mistakes. Someone trips on the wet floor and breaks their wrist. Someone touches exposed wiring and gets shocked. Someone opens a hot valve without thinking and scalds their hand with steam. Each accident strains the medical resources further and reminds everyone that in this environment, even minor injuries can become serious problems. There is also the danger from other people. Stress and fear are pushing some individuals toward violence. Arguments escalate faster than they used to. Shoving matches break out over trivial disputes. A few days ago, 2 men got into a fistfight over a chair. A chair. The guards broke it up. But the incident reminded everyone that civilization is a thin veneer and it is wearing away. Suicide, as we mentioned earlier, is a danger people create for themselves. The knowledge that you could end it at any time is both comforting and terrifying. You have thought about it. Everyone has. The thought sneaks in during the darkest moments. Just end it. Stop the suffering. Take control of the one thing you can still control. You push the thought away, but it returns, persistent, seductive in its simplicity. The danger you cannot see is the hardest to process. Radiation is not a concern. This is 1945 and nuclear weapons are still theoretical for Germany. But biological contamination is very real. The sewage system is failing. Bacteria are multiplying. The water is tainted. The air is full of pathogens. You are being exposed to things that will make you sick. But you cannot see them, cannot avoid them, can only wait to see if your immune system is strong enough to fight them off. The psychological danger is perhaps the most insidious. Fear becomes a constant companion. It sits in your chest, a tight knot that never quite releases. It spikes during bombardments when the walls shake and you think this is it, this is the one that breaks through. It subsides slightly during quiet periods, but never goes away completely. The fear is wearing you down, eroding your mental health, pushing you toward a breaking point that you can feel approaching but cannot prevent. You scan the environment constantly, unconsciously, looking for threats. Which ceiling looks most likely to collapse? Which wall shows the most cracks? Where would you run if the lights went out? Where would you hide if Soviet soldiers burst in? Your brain is in a constant state of threat assessment, burning energy you do not have, generating stress hormones that are poisoning your system. Sleep is when you are most vulnerable. You lie in your bunk, unable to defend yourself, unable to react quickly if something happens. This is why your sleep is so poor. Your nervous system refuses to fully disengage because disengaging could mean death. So you hover in that shallow state between waking and sleeping, aware enough to react, too alert to rest properly. The danger is omnipresent. It is in the concrete above your head and the water at your feet. It is in the food you eat and the air you breathe. It is in the people around you and in your own deteriorating mental state. You are surrounded by threats, drowning in danger, and there is no escape, no relief, no moment of true safety. This is life with constant danger, where every breath might be your last for reasons ranging from artillery shells to carbon monoxide to bacterial infection to your own hand reaching for a way out, where the only certainty is uncertainty, where the only safety is the temporary luck of having survived this far. Welcome to the most dangerous place in Berlin. Not because you are under bombardment, though you are. Not because the enemy is approaching, though they are. But because you are trapped in a failing system with no way out and diminishing options for survival. The bunker is both your protection and your prison, and it is killing you slowly while keeping you barely alive. Enjoy the safety, while it lasts. Chapter 13. What passes for leisure time? Let us talk about what you do when you are not working. The idea of leisure time in a bunker seems absurd, but the human mind needs breaks from routine or it shatters completely. So people find ways to pass the hours between shifts, activities that give the illusion of normalcy in this abnormal existence. Reading is the most common pastime. There are books in the bunker brought down during the initial stocking. The selection is limited and eclectic. Nazi propaganda literature that no one wants to read. Technical manuals for equipment that no longer exists. A few classics of German literature that have been read so many times the pages are falling out of the bindings. People read anything just to have something to focus on besides their situation. You have seen people reading the same book multiple times, not because they enjoy it but because it is familiar. The comfort of a known story in an environment where nothing is predictable. They turn pages they have already memorized, their eyes following words they could recite from memory, the physical act of reading providing a meditative escape. The books circulate through the bunker population. Someone finishes one and passes it along. It moves from person to person, acquiring annotations in the margins, comments and thoughts from previous readers. You find a book that has been read by a dozen people before you, each one leaving a mark, a brief record of their existence in penciled notes next to paragraphs that resonated with them. Cards are another form of entertainment. There are a few decks scattered around the bunker. The cards are worn soft from constant handling, the corners rounded, the faces barely legible from accumulated grime. People play skat, a traditional German card game, betting with cigarettes or extra rations or promises of favors. The card games have their own social dynamic. The same people tend to play together, forming small groups that gather in whatever space they can find. The games are serious affairs, played with intensity that seems disproportionate until you realize that winning or losing might mean the difference between an extra cigarette today or going without. Chess is popular among the officers and educated staff. There are 2 or 3 chess sets in the bunker. You see them set up in the common areas, games in progress that last for days as the players make moves between duties. The chess boards become sites of contemplation, people standing and staring at the positions, thinking through strategies, losing themselves in the abstract problem-solving that chess provides. Some of the chess games have taken on symbolic weight. The players are not just moving pieces. They are fighting proxy battles, playing out fantasies of control and victory in a miniature world where they can still win. Knights capture pawns. Bishops dominate diagonals. Queens wreak havoc. It is everything the real war is not. Orderly, comprehensible, winnable. Writing is less common, but some people do it. Diary entries. Letters to family members who may never receive them. Some write poetry, surprisingly. You would not expect poetry to flourish in a bunker, but human creativity finds expression even here. The poems are mostly terrible, melodramatic, and overwrought, but they matter to the people writing them. The letters are the saddest form of writing. People pour their hearts onto paper, confessing things they never said aloud, apologizing for mistakes, expressing love and regret. They seal these letters in envelopes and address them to wives, children, parents. They keep them in their pockets or under their mattresses. Some believe they will be able to mail them someday. Others know the letters will never be sent but write them anyway as a form of catharsis. Conversation is the default leisure activity. People gather in small groups and talk. Not about the war. Not about the situation. Those topics are exhausting. Instead, they talk about the past. About their lives before. About girlfriends and summers and jobs and anything that reminds them they were once normal people living normal lives. These conversations have a quality of collective memory maintenance. People recounting events from before the war, polishing these memories through repeated retelling, keeping them bright and clear against the gray present. They describe meals they ate, places they visited, moments of happiness that feel impossibly distant now. Some conversations turn philosophical. What is the meaning of all this? What did we do wrong? Where did Germany go off course? These discussions can get heated, especially when alcohol is involved. People who are normally quiet become passionate, arguing about politics and history and morality in ways they would never have dared to above ground. Rumors are a form of entertainment in themselves. Wild stories circulate through the bunker. The Soviets are retreating. American forces are negotiating a separate peace. A new wonder weapon is being deployed that will turn the tide. No one believes these rumors, but people repeat them anyway, finding comfort in the fantasy even as they acknowledge its impossibility. Music exists but is rare. There is a gramophone somewhere with a few records, mostly classical music. Wagner, inevitably. The gramophone gets played occasionally when someone can arrange for electricity to be spared and a private space to be available. The music sounds strange in the bunker, the acoustics all wrong, but it provides a brief escape into beauty. Some people hum or sing quietly to themselves. Fragments of songs remembered from childhood. Hymns, folk songs. You hear someone humming while they work, the tune barely audible. A small assertion of humanity against the grinding mechanization of bunker life. Exercise is almost impossible. There is no space for physical activity. Some people do push-ups or sit-ups in their bunks when they have energy, trying to maintain some level of fitness. But most have given up on exercise. The limited calories make physical exertion feel wasteful. Why burn energy you cannot replace? Grooming becomes a leisure activity for some. The few people who still care about their appearance spend time on the limited grooming they can manage. Shaving carefully, attempting to wash and comb their hair, polishing boots that will only get scuffed again immediately. It is a ritual of self-respect, maintaining standards because the alternative is surrendering completely to the degradation. Sex happens, as we touched on earlier. It is furtive and desperate. People find dark corners or storage rooms. The encounters are quick, driven more by the need for connection and the desire to feel something other than fear than by genuine passion. Afterward, people return to their duties without discussing what happened, the intimacy boxed away like everything else that might be too real to examine closely. Gambling expands beyond cards. People bet on anything. How many artillery shells will hit in the next hour? Whether the generators will fail today? How much longer until the Soviets reach the bunker? The bets are dark humor disguised as wagers, a way to impose structure and meaning on chaos. Religious practice is private and varied. Some people pray regularly, finding comfort in faith. Others have abandoned religion, unable to reconcile a benevolent God with their current circumstances. You see people with rosaries, moving their fingers along beads, lips moving in silent prayer. You see others who have thrown away their crosses, declaring that God is either dead or was never there to begin with. Alcohol, when available, is the most effective escape. People drink to oblivion when they can get their hands on liquor. They drink methodically, purposefully, aiming for unconsciousness. Drunk people are happier for a few hours. They laugh at things that are not funny. They tell stories with enthusiasm. They forget where they are. Then they sober up and the reality crashes back. Worse than before. Daydreaming becomes a skill. You develop the ability to check out mentally while still appearing present. You stare at a wall and let your mind wander to somewhere else. A beach you visited once. Cafe you liked. A woman you loved. The daydreams are vivid, almost hallucinatory in their detail. You can taste the coffee, feel the sand, hear her laugh. Then someone calls your name and the daydream shatters and you are back in the concrete tomb. Some people have created elaborate fantasy lives in their heads. Scenarios of escape, of survival, of what they will do when this is over. They have planned every detail. Where they will go. Who they will find. How they will rebuild their lives. These fantasies are acknowledged to be impossible but are maintained anyway as a form of psychological survival. Observing others becomes a pastime. You watch people noticing their habits and quirks. The way someone always touches a particular spot on the wall when they walk past. The way another person counts their steps. The small rituals and repetitive behaviors that emerge in captivity. People watching is free and endlessly available. Sleep itself is sometimes used as leisure. When you have a few hours free and nothing else to do, you lie down and try to sleep, even if you are not particularly tired. Sleep is escape. Sleep is time not spent being conscious of your situation. Some people sleep as much as they possibly can, embracing unconsciousness as a drug. There is also a peculiar form of dark entertainment in discussing how bad things could get. People sit around and catalog the ways their situation could deteriorate further. Food running out, water running out, generators failing, Soviets breaking in. Each scenario is dissected with clinical detail. It is morbid but somehow reassuring to name the fears, to drag them into the light where they can be examined and discussed. This is leisure time in the bunker. It is not relaxing. It is not fun. It is simply time that is slightly less unbearable than working time. It is minutes and hours filled with activities that provide momentary distraction from the relentless awareness that you are trapped underground waiting to die. Enjoy your free time. Try not to think about how you used to spend your evenings. Try not to remember what leisure actually feels like. Just be grateful for these moments when you are not actively working, when you can pretend, briefly, that you are something more than a body performing functions in a concrete coffin. Chapter 14. Communicating with the dying world. The communications room is the nerve center of the bunker's connection to the outside world. It is also a chronicle of that world's collapse, visible in real time through the degradation of incoming messages. The room is small, barely 12 feet by 8 feet. 3 operators sit at a long desk facing a wall of equipment. Telephone switchboards with hundreds of jacks and cables. Radio receivers crackling with static. Teleprinters that clatter intermittently, spitting out messages on rolls of paper. This is how information flows into the bunker, and the flow is becoming a trickle. The telephone system was once extensive. Direct lines to military headquarters, government offices, field commanders across Germany and occupied territories. Those lines are going dark one by one. You can see it on the switchboard, the jacks that used to glow with active connections now dark and silent. The operators test the lines periodically, plugging in cables, listening for a dial tone that increasingly does not come. When a call does come through, it is usually bad news delivered through a connection so degraded that you can barely understand the words. Static. Interference. The line cutting out mid-sentence. The caller shouting to be heard. The operators lean close to their headsets, straining to catch every word, scribbling notes on pads of paper that are rapidly filling up with fragmentary reports of disaster. You deliver these messages to the senior staff, watching their faces as they read. The messages all say variations of the same thing. Position overrun. Requesting immediate reinforcement. Out of ammunition. breaking contact, last transmission. The geography of controlled territory is shrinking with each message, the pins on the map being moved or removed entirely as units are destroyed or simply stop responding. Radio communication is more reliable than telephone in some ways, less reliable in others. The radio can reach farther, connecting to units that are too distant or too mobile for telephone lines. But radio is also vulnerable to interference, jamming, atmospheric conditions. The operators fiddle constantly with their equipment, adjusting frequencies, tweaking antennas, trying to maintain connections that keep fading in and out. The radio traffic has a particular quality of desperation. Voices crackling through static, clipped and urgent. Code words and military jargon attempting to convey complex situations in brief transmissions. You do not need to understand the codes to grasp the essential content. Things are bad and getting worse. Units are being annihilated. Defenses are collapsing. The end is approaching from all directions. Some radio transmissions are intercepted enemy communications. Soviet forces are not particularly concerned with encryption anymore. They know they are winning. They broadcast in clear language, coordinating attacks, reporting positions, requesting artillery support. The German operators listen to these transmissions and translate them for intelligence value, but mostly they listen with the sick fascination of watching your own execution being planned in real time. The teleprinters produce written messages automatically, transmitted from remote locations and printed out on rolls of paper. These machines were the height of communication technology just a few years ago. Now they sit mostly idle, occasionally clattering to life to print out a message that is usually hours or days out of date by the time it arrives. The messages that do come through the teleprinters have become increasingly bizarre. Orders from high command to units that no longer exist. Requests for reports from offices that have been obliterated. Bureaucratic demands for paperwork from a government that has ceased to function except in the fevered imagination of the people still issuing these orders. You read one teleprinter message that demands a full inventory of equipment and personnel from an armored division. The division in question was destroyed 3 weeks ago. Everyone knows this, but the message still goes out, typed by someone somewhere who is either ignorant of the facts or has retreated so far into denial that they cannot process reality. Communication with the outside world beyond military channels is almost non-existent. There is no mail service. The postal system has collapsed along with everything else. Letters pile up in bags with nowhere to go. People write to family members they will never contact. The letters accumulate, undelivered, testaments to communication that cannot happen. There are a few civilian telephone lines still functioning, though their use is tightly controlled. Important people can sometimes place calls to relatives if the lines are working and if someone on the other end can still answer. These calls are brief, monitored, and usually heartbreaking. You overhear fragments. "Are you safe? I don't know when I can come home. Tell the children I love them." Then the connection cuts out and that is the last time they speak. News from the outside world comes primarily through radio broadcasts. The German stations are still broadcasting, though their content has become completely detached from reality. They speak of strategic withdrawals and regrouping and the final victory that is just around the corner. No one in the bunker believes these broadcasts, but people listen anyway, drawn to the familiar voices even as they recognize the lies. Foreign broadcasts can be picked up on some frequencies. The BBC, Soviet radio. These stations tell a different story, one of German defeat and Allied triumph. Listening to enemy broadcasts is technically forbidden, punishable offenses under military law. But the guards no longer care. People tune in to hear what the other side is saying, to get a version of events that aligns more closely with the reality they can see. The Soviet broadcasts are particularly brutal. They list German units destroyed. They announce the capture of cities and the advance of their armies. They call for German soldiers to surrender, promising fair treatment. Whether those promises are true is unknown, but they are appealing to people who see no other options. Communication within the bunker is its own challenge. The different levels and rooms are connected by telephone intercom systems that work intermittently. You pick up a phone to call another room and sometimes you get connected, sometimes you get a deadline, sometimes you get connected to the wrong room entirely. The system is failing like everything else. Messages get delivered by hand because the internal phone system cannot be relied upon. This is your job, running slips of paper from room to room, person to person. You are a human telegraph system, carrying information that is often trivial and occasionally vital. You learn not to read the messages too closely. Knowing too much can be dangerous. Some communication happens through informal channels. Gossip spreads through the bunker faster than official messages. You hear rumors before they are confirmed. You learn who is sick, who is breaking down, who is planning what, all through the whispered conversations that happen in corridors and sleeping quarters. This informal communication network is more reliable than the official one in some ways, more accurate about what is actually happening versus what people wish were happening. There is also communication through silence. What is not said becomes as important as what is said. When a unit stops responding, that silence communicates destruction. When a telephone line goes dead and stays dead, that silence communicates the loss of territory. When someone stops talking, withdraws into themselves, that silence communicates psychological collapse. The senior staff have started to restrict information flow. Not all messages are being shared. Some radio transmissions are kept secret. Some intelligence reports are seen only by a select few. This information control is an attempt to manage morale, to prevent panic, but it also breeds suspicion and paranoia. If you are not being told everything, what else are you not being told? You notice that communication is becoming more one-way. Messages go out from the bunker, orders and demands and requests. Fewer messages come back. The bunker is broadcasting into a void, speaking to people who can no longer hear or no longer care to respond. It is like shouting into darkness and hearing only your own echo. There have been attempts to establish new communication lines as old ones fail. Messengers sent to the surface to carry physical messages to nearby units. Most do not come back. Either they are killed in transit or they decide that leaving the bunker is an opportunity to escape and they disappear into the chaos of dying Berlin. You cannot blame them. The last successful surface messenger returned 2 days ago. He had been gone for 36 hours, fighting through rubble and Soviet patrols to deliver a message and bring back a reply. He emerged from the staircase filthy, exhausted, and traumatized. His report was brief. The surface is hell. The city is gone. The Soviets are everywhere. No one is coming to help. That was the last messenger sent out. The decision was made that the risk is too great, the reward too minimal. The bunker is now effectively cut off, isolated, an island in a sea of enemies. Communication with the outside world is reduced to whatever radio signals can be received and the increasingly delusional belief that someone out there is listening. This is communication in the dying days, where every connection is precious and failing, where information flows in but solutions do not flow out, where the machinery of command and control is still functioning but no longer connected to anything it can actually command or control, where you send messages into the void and wait for replies that will never come. The operators sit at their posts, monitoring equipment that grows quieter each day. They log each transmission, file each message, maintain their professional demeanor. But you can see it in their eyes. They know they are presiding over the death of a communication network, watching in real time as the Third Reich loses its voice and becomes unable to speak, unable to hear, isolated and alone in its concrete tomb. Welcome to the communications room, where the news is always bad and the connections are always failing, where you learn about the outside world's destruction one crackling radio transmission at a time, where silence is spreading like a disease, consuming channels and frequencies and leaving only static in its wake. Enjoy your messages, while you can still receive them. Chapter 15. The Tools of Survival. Let us talk about the physical objects that keep you alive and functioning in this concrete tomb. The equipment, the tools, the gear that makes existence barely possible in an environment specifically hostile to human survival. Your uniform is German military issue, designed for surface conditions, completely inadequate for bunker life. The wool fabric holds moisture from the damp air, making it heavier and smelling increasingly of mildew and sweat. The uniform was supposed to be changed regularly, washed and maintained. You have been wearing the same clothes for 2 weeks straight now. They are stiff with accumulated filth and have developed their own ecosystem of bacteria. Boots are perhaps the most important piece of equipment. The floors are perpetually wet. Good boots with intact waterproofing are essential. Your boots are not good. They were good once, maybe, but weeks of walking through damp concrete corridors have degraded them. The seams are leaking. The soles are separating. Your feet are wet all the time, pruned and white and developing fungal infections between the toes. Some people have tried to improvise better footwear, wrapping their boots in cloth or plastic sheeting to create an additional water barrier, using pieces of rubber from destroyed equipment to patch holes. The results are mixed. The improvised waterproofing helps slightly but not enough to keep feet dry in an environment where dry is a theoretical concept. Flashlights are precious. The electrical lights in the bunker are unreliable, flickering and failing with increasing frequency. Having a personal flashlight means you can navigate during power outages without breaking your skull on a wall or falling downstairs. The flashlights are heavy metal cylinders that run on batteries, and batteries are increasingly scarce. You learn to use your flashlight sparingly. Quick flashes to orient yourself, then darkness to conserve the battery. Some people have started hoarding batteries, taking them from equipment that is no longer essential and hiding them for personal use. This creates shortages in critical systems, but everyone is thinking about personal survival now rather than collective good. Candles exist as a backup to flashlights. They produce light and a small amount of heat. The problem with candles in the bunker is oxygen consumption. A candle burning in a sealed room uses up breathable air faster than you would think. And the fire hazard in an environment full of stored supplies and paper documents makes open flames dangerous. But people use candles anyway when they have no other light source. Blankets are rationed, one per person, and wholly insufficient for the cold dampness of the bunker. People sleep fully clothed under their thin blankets and still shiver through the night. Some have improvised additional bedding from curtains, tablecloths, or clothing stripped from the dead. No one talks about where the extra blankets come from. Everyone knows. Eating utensils are communal and disgusting. Forks, knives, and spoons get washed in cold water with minimal soap and reused immediately. You eat with a fork that was just used by someone else, still wet from its inadequate cleaning. The lack of hot water for sterilization means every utensil is a potential vector for disease. You try not to think about it as you shovel food into your mouth. Cups and bowls are similarly shared and poorly cleaned. The metal cups develop a film on the inside that no amount of scrubbing can remove. The bowls have stains from hundreds of meals. You drink your ersatz coffee from a cup that tastes like the previous user's mouth and you force yourself not to gag. Personal hygiene items are vanishingly rare. Toothbrushes exist, but toothpaste does not. Some people have soap slivers they are hoarding. Razors are used until they are too dull to cut anything. The few people who still have combs guard them zealously. Towels are communal, damp, and smell like an entire regiment has wiped their bodies on them, which is more or less accurate. Toilet paper is strictly rationed. Each person gets a small allocation that is never quite enough. When you run out, you use whatever else is available. Newspaper, scrap paper from old reports. Some people have resorted to using cloth that they rinse out and reuse, medieval in its lack of sanitation. The indignity of it is one more chip away at human dignity. Writing implements are surprisingly important. Pencils and pens are needed for the constant bureaucracy, the forms and reports and messages that still need to be written despite their pointlessness. You see people fighting over pencils, hoarding them, breaking them to create more from fewer. A working pen is a minor treasure. Paper is being consumed at an alarming rate for a society with no future. Reports are still being filed, logs are still being maintained, orders are still being written. The paperwork continues even as the organization it documents collapses. You see stacks of paper everywhere, files and folders and loose sheets covered in typing and handwriting that no one will ever read again. Watches and clocks are essential for maintaining any kind of schedule in an environment without natural time markers. The few working clocks in the bunker are checked constantly, synchronized, their times compared and argued over. Your personal watch, if you have one, becomes a lifeline to temporal sanity. Without it, time becomes completely elastic, hours feeling like minutes or days depending on what you are doing. Medical equipment in the bunker is minimal and degrading. The doctor has his surgical instruments which he keeps clean through boiling when possible. He has bandages that are running low. He has a few medications that are running out. The lack of proper medical equipment means that conditions which would be easily treatable on the surface become serious down here. Tools for maintenance are scattered throughout the bunker. Wrenches, screwdrivers, hammers, all used to keep the aging infrastructure functioning. The maintenance crew treats these tools with the reverence they deserve. A broken wrench cannot be replaced. A lost screwdriver is a genuine crisis. Every tool is inventoried and accounted for. Gas masks, as we mentioned, are issued to everyone but largely ignored. They hang on hooks or sit on shelves, rubber degrading, filters of unknown effectiveness. If a gas attack actually came, you would probably fumble with your mask, fail to seal it properly, and die anyway. But having the mask provides a small psychological comfort even if its practical value is questionable. Weapons are locked in an armory under guard. Rifles, pistols, grenades, ammunition. These are the tools for a fight that everyone hopes will not happen but knows probably will. The weapons are maintained obsessively, cleaned and oiled and checked, ready for the moment when the bunker is breached and the final desperate defense begins. Some people have acquired personal weapons through various means. A pistol tucked in a boot. A knife hidden under a mattress. These are not officially sanctioned but are tolerated because everyone understands the desire to have some means of self-defense or, more darkly, a quick exit if capture appears imminent. Cleaning supplies are nearly exhausted. The few mops and buckets get used constantly but make little difference in an environment where water seeps from walls and floors are perpetually damp. The disinfectant ran out weeks ago. Now cleaning consists of moving dirty water from one place to another and hoping that friction and cold water remove some percentage of the filth. Rope and cord have 1,000 uses in the bunker. Tying things down, hanging laundry, creating improvised repairs, rigging supports for damaged structures. Some rope has disappeared, taken by people for purposes that are not discussed. You see someone with a coil of rope and wonder if they are planning to use it for climbing or for something darker and more final. Containers of all kinds are valuable. Bottles, jars, cans, anything that can hold water or food or supplies. People collect containers compulsively, hoarding them against future need. You see shelves lined with empty bottles waiting to be filled with something, anything, a hedge against scarcity that is already here. The generators are the most critical equipment in the entire complex. These massive diesel engines produce the electricity that powers everything. They run constantly, their mechanical heartbeat the sound of life in the bunker. The maintenance crew services them with the care surgeons give to critical patients, because if these engines fail, everyone dies. Fuel for the generators is stored in tanks that are being depleted. Every hour of generator operation burns fuel that cannot be replaced. The math is simple and brutal. At current consumption rates, the fuel will last another 2 weeks, maybe 3. After that, the lights go out permanently. This is the equipment that sustains you. These tools and objects and machines that keep you breathing, keep you fed, keep you barely functioning in an environment designed to require these things while providing insufficient quantities of all of them. Every object is precious. Every tool is essential. And all of them are failing or running out or breaking down under the stress of continuous use. You depend on technology and equipment that was never meant for this sustained operation. You rely on backup systems that have become primary systems. You use tools that are wearing out faster than they can be repaired. And everyone knows that when these things finally fail completely, that is when survival becomes impossible. Welcome to the equipment room, where everything you need to live is degrading, depleting, or already broken. Where maintenance is a losing battle against entropy. Where the tools of survival are themselves dying, taking your chances with them. Enjoy your gear, while it still works. Chapter 16. The Psychology of Being Buried Alive. Let us talk about what this does to your mind. Because the physical conditions are terrible, yes, but the psychological damage is deeper, more insidious, and probably permanent for anyone who survives. Fear is the baseline emotion, not panic, not terror. Just constant, grinding fear that sits in your chest like a weight. You are afraid when you wake up. You are afraid while you work. You are afraid when you try to sleep. The fear never leaves. It becomes so familiar that you almost stop noticing it, the way you stop noticing a chronic pain. But it is always there, coloring everything. The fear manifests physically. Your heart rate is elevated even at rest. Your muscles stay tense, shoulders hunched, jaw clenched. You notice your hands shaking sometimes for no reason. Your stomach is constantly tight, the muscles contracted against phantom threats. Your body is preparing for fight or flight in an environment where neither is possible. Claustrophobia affects people differently. Some adapt to the confined spaces, their nervous systems recalibrating what normal feels like. Others spiral into panic attacks, hyperventilating in corners, clawing at walls, screaming that they need to get out. You have seen both. You have seen people who seem fine suddenly lose control, the accumulated stress breaking through whatever psychological barriers they had constructed. The lack of natural light is destroying everyone's mental health. Humans are not designed to live in perpetual artificial illumination. Your circadian rhythms are completely disrupted. Your melatonin production is confused. Your brain is receiving signals that it is both always day and always night, and the contradiction is creating neurological stress that compounds every other problem. You notice yourself becoming irritable. Small things that would normally be minor annoyances now trigger disproportionate anger. Someone chewing too loudly. Someone walking too slowly in a corridor. These trivial irritations can spark rage that feels impossible to control. You see others experiencing the same thing. Arguments erupt over nothing. People apologize later, but the damage to relationships accumulates. Depression is spreading like a contagion. People sitting motionless for hours, staring at nothing. People who stop caring about hygiene, about food, about anything. They go through the motions of their duties, but there is no one home behind their eyes. They have checked out psychologically, retreating to some internal space where the horror cannot reach them. You find yourself having intrusive thoughts. Images of the ceiling collapsing, crushing you slowly. Visions of Soviet soldiers bursting in, firing indiscriminately. Scenarios where you run out of air and suffocate, conscious but unable to move as your brain shuts down from oxygen deprivation. These thoughts appear unbidden and are very difficult to dismiss. Paranoia is increasing. People suspect each other of hoarding food, of stealing water, of planning betrayals. The close quarters mean everyone is constantly in everyone else's business, and this forced intimacy breeds suspicion. You catch yourself watching others, wondering what they are really thinking, whether they can be trusted. The social bonds that hold groups together are fraying. Some people are experiencing dissociation. They report feeling detached from their bodies, watching themselves from outside, as if they are spectators to their own lives. This is a protective mechanism, the psyche creating distance from unbearable reality. But it is also disturbing, this sense of being disconnected from your own experiences. Time perception is severely distorted. An hour can feel like 10 minutes or 10 hours depending on what you are doing and your mental state. Days blend together into an undifferentiated mass of underground existence. You lose track of how long you have been down here. A week? 2 weeks? More? The days no longer have distinct identities. They are all the same suffocating cycle. Memory is becoming unreliable. You forget conversations you had yesterday. You cannot remember if you ate today or if that was yesterday. Details slip away, and you are not sure if you are actually forgetting or if the details were never that distinct to begin with. Your brain is not forming strong memories because there is nothing distinctive to remember. Every day is the same. Sleep deprivation is destroying cognitive function. You cannot think clearly. Complex problems that you could once solve easily now seem insurmountably difficult. You read the same sentence multiple times without comprehending it. You forget what you were doing in the middle of doing it. Your brain is running on fumes. Anxiety about the future is crippling. Not long-term future. No one thinks about long-term anymore, but immediate future. What happens when the food runs out? What happens when the Soviets break in? What happens to you personally? The uncertainty is worse than knowing in some ways. At least with certainty you could prepare mentally. The not knowing creates endless speculation and worry. Some people have developed compulsions, touching a particular spot on the wall every time they pass, counting steps, checking that their belongings are still where they left them, repeatedly, obsessively. These rituals provide an illusion of control in a situation where control is impossible. The compulsions are irrational but also psychologically necessary. Grief is present but suppressed. Grief for the life you had before. Grief for the people you have lost. Grief for your own probable death. But you cannot afford to process this grief. You cannot afford to break down. So it stays inside, compressed, adding to the psychological pressure that is building toward some kind of rupture. Hope is dying but not dead. This is the cruelest thing. If hope were completely gone, you could give up and find a kind of peace in acceptance. But hope lingers, a small stubborn flame that refuses to go out despite overwhelming evidence that it should. Hope for rescue, hope for survival, hope that somehow this will end in a way that is not complete disaster. This hope keeps you going but also makes the situation more torturous because you cannot quite let go. Suicidal ideation is common. Not active planning for most people, just the thought that appears and sits there. The awareness that you could end this at any time. The knowledge that you have methods available. The consideration of whether continuing is worth the suffering. Most people push these thoughts away, but they return, persistent and seductive. You notice yourself becoming numb, emotionally flat. Things that should provoke strong reactions produce only a muted response. Someone tells you another unit has been destroyed and you feel nothing. You see someone crying and you cannot summon empathy. Your emotional range is compressing toward a kind of neutral gray where everything is equally meaningless. The identity you had before is dissolving. You used to be a person with a name, a history, preferences, personality. Now you are just a body performing functions. You notice yourself thinking in third person sometimes. He needs to eat. He should try to sleep. As if you are managing a biological machine rather than being a conscious being with agency. Relationships with others are becoming transactional. You help someone not out of kindness but because you might need their help later. You share not out of generosity but to establish reciprocity. The genuine human connections that make life meaningful are being replaced with exchanges of mutual benefit. You are all becoming isolated nodes rather than a community. Some people are having religious experiences, visions, voices, encounters with the divine or the demonic depending on their interpretation. Whether these are genuine spiritual experiences or psychotic breaks induced by stress and oxygen deprivation is unclear. The people having them find them meaningful regardless of their ontological status. You find yourself fantasizing about death sometimes. Not in a suicidal way exactly. More like imagining the relief of it, the cessation of fear, the end of hunger and discomfort and stress. Death starts to look like peace, like rest, like the conclusion to a situation that has become unendurable. This is a dangerous thought pattern and you know it, but you cannot fully suppress it. The worst part is the awareness. You know what is happening to you psychologically. You can observe your own mental deterioration with a clinical detachment that is itself disturbing. You watch yourself developing symptoms of severe stress and trauma and you cannot stop it. You are a passenger in your own breakdown. This is the psychology of being buried alive, where your mind wages constant war against your environment and your circumstances and increasingly against itself, where coping mechanisms are deployed and exhausted one by one, where the architecture of your personality is being dismantled by forces you cannot resist, where sanity is not a state but a daily struggle that you are slowly losing. Welcome to the inside of your own breaking mind, where fear and exhaustion and hopelessness are eroding who you thought you were, where each day underground takes you further from the person you used to be and closer to some creature of pure survival instinct, where the prison is not just concrete but also psychological, and the bars are thoughts you cannot escape. Enjoy your consciousness, while it still resembles something human. Chapter 17. Living with Death. Death is not an abstraction in the bunker. It is a presence, a neighbor, a constant companion who has moved in and made himself comfortable. Let us talk about what it means to live in immediate proximity to your probable mortality. People have died down here. Not many yet, but some. Illness, accidents, one suicide. Their bodies were removed, carried up the stairs and into whatever disposal system still functions in the shattered Reich Chancellery above. But their absence remains a negative space in the social fabric of the bunker. You knew some of them. Not well, perhaps. No one gets close to anyone down here. But you knew their faces, their names, their positions in the hierarchy. And now they are gone, erased, as if they never existed except for the gap where they used to stand or sleep or work. The bunker does not have facilities for storing bodies. There is no morgue, no cooled space where the dead can be kept with dignity. When someone dies, the body must be removed quickly before decomposition begins in the damp warmth of the underground. This creates a brutal efficiency around death. Someone dies. Someone else notifies the doctor. The body is wrapped in whatever is available. Guards carry it up the stairs. Life continues. The lack of ceremony is disturbing. You would expect some acknowledgement, some ritual marking the passage from life to death. Instead, there is just removal and continuation. The machine keeps running. The shift is filled by someone else. The bunk is assigned to a new occupant. The dead person is forgotten with a speed that feels inhuman but is probably necessary for psychological survival. You think about your own death constantly. Not in a morbid way exactly, more like planning. If the bunker is breached, where would you try to run? If you were wounded, would you fight for survival or welcome the end? If capture seemed imminent, would you surrender or use the pistol you know is kept in the armory? These are practical considerations that everyone is making. Some people have made explicit plans for how they want to die if it comes to that. They have discussed it with each other, agreements about what to do if one is wounded beyond help or if capture is certain. These are conversations you overhear in fragments. Don't let them take me alive. If I am too far gone, you know what to do. The specifics are left unsaid but understood. The senior staff have cyanide capsules. Everyone knows this. They were issued ampoules of potassium cyanide for use as a last resort. Hitler has one. The officers have them. This is the ultimate privilege of rank, the ability to choose a quick chemical death over whatever the alternative might be. You do not have cyanide. Your death, if it comes, will likely be slower and more painful. There is a particular kind of arithmetic you find yourself doing, calculating survival probabilities. If the bunker holds for another week, what are the odds you make it? If food runs out, how long can you survive on water alone? If the Soviets break in, what percentage of people might they spare? These are mathematical problems with no good answers, but you calculate them anyway. The proximity of death changes how you value things. Food matters more because each meal might be your last. Sleep matters more because you might not wake up. Small pleasures, a moment of warmth, a kind word, these take on outsized significance when you are aware that the total number of such moments remaining is finite and shrinking. You have thought about the manner of your death. Quick is preferable to slow. Unconsciousness is preferable to awareness. Being killed in your sleep by a ceiling collapse is actually one of the better scenarios, all things considered. At least you would not see it coming. The worst deaths are the ones where you know it is happening, where you have minutes or hours to contemplate the end while being unable to prevent it. Some people have written letters to be found after they die. Instructions about what should be done with their remains if possible. Messages for family members who will probably never receive them. These letters are kept on bodies or in pockets, a final communication from the dead to the living that will likely go undelivered but provide some comfort in the writing. The concept of legacy is strange down here. What will you leave behind? Who will remember you? In a normal death, there are possessions to distribute, relationships to conclude, some mark on the world that persists after you are gone. But here you have almost nothing. Your life will end and it will be as if you never existed, a brief consciousness that flickered in the darkness and went out without a trace. This lack of legacy is liberating in some ways. If nothing you do matters in the long term, then you are free from the burden of making your life meaningful. You can exist purely in the moment because there is no future to plan for. But it is also deeply depressing, the awareness that your existence will leave no mark, no impression, no evidence that you were ever here. Children who die young are said to have died before their time, their potential unfulfilled. You are all dying before your time down here, but there is no one to mourn the potential that will go unrealized. The careers you will not have, the families you will not raise, the lives you will not live. It all ends in this concrete box, and the waste of it is staggering. You watch Hitler and wonder what he thinks about death. He is closer to it than anyone, his health failing, his enemies closing in. Does he fear it? Does he welcome it? Does he have regrets about the choices that led him and everyone around him to this end? You will never know. He does not share such thoughts. He maintains his facade of certainty even as the structure crumbles around him. Death in the bunker will likely not be dignified. There will be no peaceful passing surrounded by loved ones. More likely it will be violent, sudden, chaotic, the ceiling collapsing, gunfire in the corridors, flames spreading, or slow, starvation, dehydration, infection. None of these deaths are good deaths, if such a thing exists. They are all variations of terrible. You have developed a certain fatalism. Death is coming. You cannot prevent it. The only question is when and how. This acceptance removes some of the fear but adds a weight of inevitability that is its own kind of oppression. You are waiting to die, and the waiting is almost worse than the dying would be. Religious people down here talk about the afterlife, about being reunited with loved ones, about judgment and redemption. You do not know if you believe any of that, but you hope it is true because the alternative, that death is just cessation, feels unbearably empty. To suffer through all this and then simply stop existing with no continuation, no meaning, no point to any of it. Some people have started giving away their possessions. Not that anyone has much, but what little they have, they distribute to others. A photograph, a letter, a small keepsake. It is a form of preparation, getting their affairs in order before the end. You see someone hand over a watch or a book and you know what they are doing. They are saying goodbye without saying the words. The conversation about death is mostly silent. No one discusses it explicitly because making it explicit makes it too real. Instead, there are knowing looks, shared glances of understanding. You all know. You are all thinking about it. But to talk about it would be to acknowledge that it is not just possible but likely, and that acknowledgement would make it harder to get through each day. You have imagined your own funeral, a strange exercise in fantasy. Who would attend? What would be said? But the reality is there will be no funeral. There will be no memorial service. You will die and be disposed of and forgotten. This is the death that awaits you in the bunker, anonymous and unmarked. Some part of you has already started grieving your own death, mourning in advance for the life you will not finish living. This pre-grief is its own kind of psychological burden, carrying the weight of your future absence while still being present. You are simultaneously alive and already gone, existing in a liminal state between being and non-being. The proximity of death has made some things clearer. Petty concerns that used to matter do not matter anymore. Social status means nothing when you are all equally likely to die. Grudges seem pointless when time is so limited. There is a clarity that comes from knowing the end is near, a stripping away of everything inessential. But that clarity does not make the situation more bearable. If anything, it makes it worse. You can see with perfect clarity that you are trapped in a situation with no good outcomes. Death is coming for all of you, and whether it comes today or next week is a trivial difference in the scope of eternity. This is living with death, not as a distant inevitability but as an immediate neighbor, where every moment is lived with awareness that it might be the last, where the boundary between alive and dead feels thin and permeable and easy to cross, where you are constantly calculating the odds and the methods and the meanings, where death is not the opposite of life but the context in which life is experienced. Welcome to the company of the dying, where everyone is in various stages of the same terminal condition, where survival is measured in hours and days rather than years, where death is so present that it becomes almost mundane, another feature of the environment like the damp concrete and the recycled air. Enjoy your life. What remains of it? Chapter 18. The question of what happens next. Hope is a strange thing to find in a bunker, but it exists in fragments, in whispers, in the stubborn refusal of the human mind to accept that all is lost even when evidence overwhelmingly suggests otherwise. Some people still believe in victory. This belief requires such massive denial of reality that it qualifies as delusional, but they maintain it anyway. They talk about wonder weapons being deployed, about American-Soviet conflict that will save Germany, about strategic retreats and counteroffensives that exist only in their imagination. These people are either true believers to a pathological degree or they are lying to themselves as a psychological survival mechanism. You listen to them with a mix of pity and irritation. Part of you wants to shake them and force them to acknowledge what is obvious to everyone else. The war is lost. Germany is defeated. Nothing is coming to save you. But another part of you understands that their delusions are all that keep them functional. Take away the hope, no matter how irrational, and they would collapse completely. Others have more modest hopes. Not victory but survival. They hope that somehow they will make it through the next few days. That the Soviets will accept surrender. That they will be taken prisoner rather than executed. That they will eventually return home to whatever remains of their families and their lives. These hopes are more grounded in reality but still wildly optimistic given the circumstances. The question of surrender is debated in quiet conversations. What are the odds the Soviets will accept it? What does captivity look like? Will they be sent to labor camps in Siberia? Will they be executed as war criminals? No one knows. Stories circulate about Soviet treatment of prisoners, some hopeful, others horrifying. The uncertainty is torturous. Some people are planning their escape. They study maps of Berlin, looking for routes through the rubble to Allied lines. They calculate distances and times and probabilities. They discuss when to make the attempt, whether to go alone or in groups. Most of these plans are fantastical. The chances of successfully navigating through Soviet-controlled Berlin and reaching safety are essentially zero. But planning gives them something to focus on besides despair. You have your own version of hope, though you barely admit it to yourself. You hope that when the end comes, it will be quick. You hope that you will not be tortured or humiliated. You hope that maybe, somehow, in some timeline that branches off from this one, there is a version of you that made different choices and is not trapped underground waiting to die. This is not practical hope. This is fantasy, but it keeps you moving forward. There are religious people who place their hope in divine intervention. They pray for miracles. They believe that God will not abandon them in their darkest hour. Their faith is admirable in its way, though you cannot share it. You have seen no evidence of divine presence in this bunker. If God is here, He is silent and His plans are inscrutable to the point of seeming non-existent. Some hope is placed in the idea that this will all matter somehow, that the suffering will have meaning, that history will remember and learn from this catastrophe, that future generations will be better because they will know what happened here. This is the hope of legacy, of continuation beyond death. It is cold comfort, but it is something. You notice that hope tends to be inversely proportional to information. The people who know the least about the actual military situation are the most hopeful. The people who have access to the real intelligence reports, who see the maps and read the communications, are the most despairing. Knowledge kills hope. Ignorance sustains it. There is also hope in small things. Hope that tomorrow's meal will be slightly better than today's. Hope that you will get a few hours of decent sleep. Hope that the person you have been talking to will still be alive next week. These tiny hopes are achievable, which makes them both more meaningful and more pathetic than the grand hopes of survival and victory. Children in other parts of Berlin, if any survive, must still have hope in the way children do, unable to fully comprehend the magnitude of what is happening. There are no children in the bunker, but sometimes you think about them, these hypothetical children who might still believe that adults will make things right. The thought is heartbreaking. You have moments where hope surges unexpectedly. A rumor of American forces advancing faster than expected. A radio broadcast that can be interpreted optimistically if you squint hard enough. A A moment of kindness from another person that reminds you that humanity still exists. These surges of hope are brief but powerful, lifting you emotionally before reality reasserts itself and you crash back down. The senior staff must have their own hopes, though they hide them better. They hope they can somehow negotiate a way out of this. They hope that their rank and importance will protect them from the worst consequences. They hope that history will judge them less harshly than they probably deserve. These hopes are pathetic in their self-deception, but you cannot entirely fault them. Everyone grasps at straws when drowning. Eva Braun has her own hopes, you assume. She chose to come to the bunker to stay with Hitler. What is she hoping for? That he will somehow escape and take her with him. That their relationship will be validated in death, if not in life. That this grand tragedy will have some meaning beyond its obvious horror. You do not know her well enough to say, but you imagine she hopes for something, because the alternative is that she is here for no reason at all. The guards hope that doing their duty will matter, that loyalty will be rewarded, if not in this life then in some historical accounting. They hope that following orders absolves them of responsibility for the outcomes. This is a dangerous hope, the hope that obedience exempts you from moral judgment, but it is what allows them to continue functioning. You sometimes hope for historical vindication, that someday people will understand that you were caught in circumstances beyond your control, that you did your best in an impossible situation, that you were a victim as much as a participant. This hope is probably misguided. History is written by survivors and winners, and you are unlikely to be either. But the hope persists anyway. There is a dark hope that some people have but do not speak aloud. The hope that the end will come soon, that the waiting will be over, that the uncertainty and suffering will conclude in whatever manner, and at least there will be resolution. This is hope for death, which is a paradoxical thing, but it is real and growing stronger as conditions deteriorate. You wonder what Hitler hopes for. Does he hope that National Socialism will somehow survive his death? Does he hope that future generations will resurrect his ideology? Does he hope for personal immortality through historical memory? Or has he moved beyond hope into a kind of nihilistic acceptance that this is the end and nothing beyond it matters? You will never know. His internal life is as much a bunker as this physical space, sealed and impenetrable. The maintenance crew hopes their equipment will keep functioning. This is perhaps the most practical hope in the bunker. If the generators hold, if the ventilation system keeps running, if the water pumps continue operating. These hopes are grounded in mechanical realities that can be influenced through skill and effort. It is the only hope that has any real foundation. Communication with the outside world brings occasional surges of hope. A radio broadcast suggesting that some German units are still fighting. A telephone call getting through to a position that was thought lost. These are candles in the darkness, but they illuminate so little and burn out so quickly that they almost make the darkness worse by comparison. Some people hope through action. They keep working, keep following procedures, keep maintaining the fiction that normal operations are continuing. The bureaucracy persists not because it is useful, but because following its rituals provides structure and purpose. Hope manifests as routine, as the refusal to stop doing the things that used to matter even when they clearly no longer do. You have noticed that hope is dangerous. It makes the suffering worse by suggesting that there is an alternative. Hopelessness, paradoxically, is easier to bear because it eliminates the painful gap between what is and what could be. But hope is also necessary. Without it, even the minimal effort required to survive becomes impossible. So you exist in this tension, hoping despite knowing better, because the alternative is to give up entirely. The wildest hope, the most irrational and least likely, is that somehow this will all turn out to have been a nightmare. That you will wake up and discover that none of this happened, that the war was a dream, that you are actually safe in your bed with your whole life ahead of you. This hope is obviously false, but it recurs anyway, a fantasy your mind generates in desperation. This is hope in the bunker, irrational, fragmented, desperate, necessary. It exists in the face of overwhelming evidence that it should not. It persists despite being repeatedly crushed by reality. It is the last thing to die, and maybe that is its point. Not to be realistic, but to be the final spark that keeps humans human even in the most dehumanizing circumstances. Welcome to the realm of hope, where delusion and faith are hard to distinguish, where wanting something to be true is the only argument for its possibility, where the gap between what you hope for and what you know is coming creates a cognitive dissonance that is its own form of torture. Hope on. What else can you do? Chapter 19. Rituals in the depths. Humans create rituals in any environment, but the rituals that develop in the bunker have a particular quality of desperation and superstition. Let us talk about the small ceremonies and repeated behaviors that give structure to days that otherwise blur into meaningless sameness. Some rituals are practical. The morning count, the shift change procedures, the inspection of equipment. These are official rituals, mandated by military protocol, performed because that is what is supposed to be done even when the purpose has become questionable. But people perform them with a seriousness that goes beyond mere compliance. The rituals are anchors to normalcy. You notice that people touch certain objects as they pass. A particular spot on the wall, a door frame, a railing. They might not even be aware they are doing it. The gesture has become so automatic. But watch them and you see the pattern. Same person, same object, same touch every single time. It is a small assertion of control. I can make this happen. I can predict this one tiny thing. Mealtimes, inadequate as the meals are, become ritual events. People sit in the same places. They eat in the same order. They have particular preferences for how they want their food arranged. One person always eats the protein first. Another saves it for last. These patterns are maintained with a rigidity that suggests they are more than mere preference. They are psychological structures preventing complete collapse. The daily briefing with Hitler is the bunker's most significant ritual. It happens at the same time each day, or tries to. The same people attend. They stand in the same positions. They follow the same format. Situation reports. Discussion. Orders. The fact that the situation gets worse and the orders are increasingly delusional does not change the structure of the ritual. The form persists even as the content becomes meaningless. Some people have prayer rituals. They pray at specific times, in specific places, using specific words. Whether the prayers are answered is unknown and probably unknowable, but the act of praying provides comfort. It is a connection to something beyond the bunker, a reaching toward transcendence in the most earthbound and confined environment imaginable. You have developed your own rituals without consciously deciding to. You check certain things in a specific order when you wake up. Boots, flashlight, personal items. The order never varies. If you are interrupted and have to start over, you must complete the sequence from the beginning or you feel unsettled for the rest of the day. This is mild obsessive-compulsive behavior induced by stress, but it is also functional. The ritual orients you to the day. The guards have elaborate rituals around their patrols. Routes walked in specific orders. Checkpoints visited in predetermined sequences. They could vary these patterns and probably should for security reasons, but they do not. The ritual is more important than the tactical logic. It is what they know. It is what they can control. Bedtime rituals are particularly important. The process of preparing to sleep in this place requires psychological preparation that takes the form of ritual. Specific order of removing boots and uniform pieces. Arranging belongings in a particular way. Lying down in a specific position. These rituals are attempts to make the impossible possible, to convince your nervous system that it is safe to shut down when it very clearly is not. Some rituals are social. The same people gather at the same times for conversation or cards. They sit in the same arrangements. They discuss the same topics. The content of the conversations might vary, but the structure does not. These social rituals maintain relationships and provide human connection in regulated, predictable ways that feel safer than genuine, spontaneous interaction. Cigarette breaks become ritualized for the people who smoke. They go to the designated smoking area at specific times. They light their cigarettes with particular lighters or matches that they prefer. They smoke in a specific manner, specific number of drags, specific way of holding the cigarette. The ritual transforms consumption of a scarce resource into a meditative practice. The maintenance crew has rituals around their equipment checks. They inspect systems in a specific sequence. They take readings in a particular order. They record results using specific notation. This is partly professional practice and partly superstition. If we do it the same way every time, the machinery will keep working. As if the machines care about human patterns. Document handling has become ritualized. The way papers are filed. The specific stamps used to mark them. The order in which forms are processed. The bureaucracy continues to function according to its rituals long after the bureaucracy itself has lost all connection to reality. The rituals are what remain when purpose has evaporated. Some people have rituals around photographs or personal items they manage to bring to the bunker. They look at a photograph at a specific time each day. They touch a particular keepsake. They perform these small ceremonies of remembrance, keeping alive connections to a world that no longer exists except in memory. The doctor has medical rituals. The way he washes his hands before treating patients, even when the water is cold and the soap inadequate. The specific way he arranges his instruments. The order in which he examines a patient. These rituals are professional practices that also serve as psychological armor. If I maintain standards, I maintain my identity as a physician rather than just a person watching others suffer. Meals are consumed with increasing ritualization. People spend more time on the act of eating as the quality and quantity of food decline. They chew more slowly. They arrange their food more carefully. They make the inadequate portions last longer through ritual elaboration. It is a way of creating satisfaction from insufficiency. Some rituals are darker. People who check multiple times that they have their means of escape or self-harm. Pistol, a knife, poison if they have it. They touch these items, confirming their presence, multiple times per day. It is a ritual of comfort and terror, the knowledge that they can end it if necessary, providing both reassurance and dread. The changing of the guard has become a ceremony. The formal passing of responsibility. The ritual of inspection and acceptance. This happens even though what they are guarding is unclear and from what is equally uncertain. The ritual persists because it imposes order on chaos, creates roles and identities in a situation where both are dissolving. You notice superstitions developing. Lucky items, unlucky numbers, people avoiding certain corridors or rooms that they associate with bad events. These superstitions are not rational, but they provide a sense of agency. If I avoid the unlucky things and cultivate the lucky things, I can influence my fate. The illusion of control through magical thinking. Some people ritualize their preparations for the eventual end. They review their letters. They check that their personal effects are in order. They mentally rehearse what they will do if the bunker is breached. This ritual preparation is both practical planning and psychological inoculation, attempting to reduce the terror of the unknown through familiarity. The ritual of listening to radio broadcasts has developed its own patterns. People gather at specific times. They sit in specific arrangements. They listen with specific levels of attention. The content of the broadcasts might be lies and propaganda, but the ritual of listening provides structure and the illusion of connection to the wider world. Hitler himself has rituals, his daily schedule, his preferences for how things are arranged, his specific requirements for food preparation. These rituals of the powerful are maintained by staff who understand that preserving the leader's rituals is a way of preserving the fiction that he remains in control, that the situation is manageable, that normalcy persists at least in these small performances. You have noticed that people become distressed when rituals are disrupted. A meal served at the wrong time. Patrol route altered for some reason. The disruption of ritual creates anxiety disproportionate to the actual change. This reveals how much psychological weight these rituals carry. They are load-bearing structures in minds under extreme stress. Some rituals are collective. The whole bunker falls silent during bombardments that are particularly intense. Not by agreement, but by unconscious synchronization. Everyone stops, listens, waits. The collective ritual of surviving the moment together. Then, when the bombardment eases, collective life resumes. The ritual marks time and creates shared experience. The rituals are becoming more elaborate and more strictly observed as conditions deteriorate. As control over the situation decreases, control over personal rituals increases to compensate. The correlation is clear. The worse things get, the more rigidly people cling to their small ceremonies and patterns. This is ritual in the bunker, where repeated behaviors create islands of predictability in an ocean of chaos, where superstition and routine blur together into practices that sustain sanity, where humans do what humans have always done in extremis, create meaning through repetition, impose order through ceremony, and build psychological shelter from the bricks of habit and tradition. Welcome to the realm of ritual, where touching a wall in a certain way might be the thing that keeps you sane today, where the order of putting on your boots matters more than the boots themselves, where small ceremonies become anchors preventing complete psychological drift into the void. Perform your rituals. They are all you have. Chapter 20. The end approaches. The Soviet forces are close now. You can hear them clearly through the concrete. The battle for Berlin is entering its final phase, and the Reich Chancellery is one of the last prizes remaining. Every hour brings the sounds of combat closer. The artillery fire has changed in character. It is more precise now, less random bombardment and more targeted destruction. Soviet forces know where the important buildings are. They are systematically destroying them. The hits on the Reich Chancellery are coming more frequently, more accurately. The building above you is being reduced to rubble floor by floor. Infantry combat is audible. Machine gun fire. The distinctive sound of German MG-42s answered by Soviet weapons. Grenades exploding. The shouts of men fighting and dying mere hundreds of meters away. This is no longer a distant battle. This is happening right above you, almost literally on your doorstep. The bunker is preparing for the final act, though preparation is perhaps too dignified a word for what is happening. People are burning documents, mountains of paper being fed into fires, creating smoke that has to be vented through damaged systems. The smoke filters back into the living spaces, making the air quality even worse. But the documents must be destroyed. Evidence must be eliminated. You watch as files are pulled from cabinets and thrown into flames. Years of records, orders, reports, all of it being reduced to ash. The destruction is both practical, preventing these documents from falling into enemy hands, and symbolic, erasing the administrative trail of crimes and failures. The paper burns easily, eager almost to be consumed. Some people are destroying personal items, letters, photographs, diaries, anything that might incriminate them or their families if found by advancing Soviets. You see a woman feeding photographs one by one into a fire, watching faces disappear into flame and ash. Her expression is blank. She is beyond emotion now, just performing necessary tasks. The atmosphere in the bunker has changed. The pretense of normal operations has mostly dropped away. People move with a quality of aimlessness, going through motions without purpose. Conversations have dwindled. There is nothing left to say that has not been said. Everyone is wrapped in their own thoughts, their own preparations for whatever comes next. Hitler is deteriorating visibly. You see him less frequently now as he remains mostly in his quarters. When he does emerge, he is shakier, grayer, more hunched than before. His left hand trembles constantly. His eyes have a distant quality, as if he is already somewhere else. The man who started this war is ending it as a physical wreck in a concrete tomb. Eva Braun moves through the bunker with a strange calm. She has made her choice to be here, to stay until the end. She tends to Hitler, maintains her appearance as best she can, and waits. What she is waiting for is unclear. Death, presumably, but she faces it with a composure that is either admirable or evidence of complete dissociation from reality. Senior officers are having quiet conversations in corners. You see them huddled together, speaking in low voices, glancing around to see who might be listening. They are making plans, presumably. What those plans are, you do not know. Surrender negotiations, escape attempts, final stands. Whatever they decide will affect everyone, but as usual, the lower ranks are not consulted. Weapons are being distributed more widely. The armory is being opened. People who have never been armed before are being given pistols and grenades. This could be preparation for defense of the bunker, or it could be recognition that people should have the means to end their own lives if capture becomes imminent. Probably both. The food situation has reached critical. Rations are being cut again. The meals are smaller, further apart. The kitchen is trying to stretch the remaining supplies, but there is no hiding the mathematics. Days of food left. Maybe a week if people accept near-starvation rations. Beyond that, nothing. The bunker will run out of food before it runs out of anything else. Water is equally problematic. The cistern is low. You can see the waterline mark on the wall of the cistern room, dramatically lower than it was days ago. Water is being rationed strictly now. Half cup for drinking. Minimal water for cooking. No water for washing except hands. The unwashed smell of dozens of bodies is overwhelming. The generators are sputtering. Fuel is nearly exhausted. The maintenance crew is cycling the generators, running them intermittently to conserve fuel. This means power outages are frequent. Lights go out. Ventilation stops. Everything goes dark and silent except for the sounds of breathing and distant combat. Then the generators restart and minimal power returns. But each cycle is a preview of what happens when the fuel runs out completely. Some people have already given up. They lie in their bunks, unresponsive. They have stopped eating what little food is offered. They have stopped speaking. They are waiting to die, having decided that actively participating in survival is pointless. You see them and wonder if they have the right idea. Is continuing to struggle against the inevitable actually rational? Others are frantic. They pace corridors. They ask questions that have no answers. They make desperate plans for escape or survival that have no basis in reality. The psychological pressure has cracked them in the opposite direction, into futile activity and denial. You are not sure which response is better, passive acceptance or active denial. Both lead to the same place. The guards are tense. They know that Soviet forces could breach the bunker at any time. They maintain their posts, but their weapons are not just for show anymore. They are preparing to fight, or preparing to use those weapons on themselves. Every guard you see has the look of someone who has accepted that they are in the final hours of their life. Communications are nearly dead. A few radio channels still function, but incoming messages are rare and fragmentary. The telephone lines are almost all cut. The outside world has shrunk to static and silence. The bunker is now truly isolated, an island of desperate humanity surrounded by enemies who are methodically destroying everything around it. There are rumors of surrender negotiations. Hitler allegedly discussing terms with various intermediaries. But these rumors are vague and probably false. Hitler has made clear in his rants and speeches that he will not surrender. He will not be taken alive. He has prepared for this end, and he will see it through to conclusion on his terms. What those terms are will be revealed soon. You feel the weight of the ending bearing down. Time is compressing. Hours feel like minutes. The normal rhythm of the day has collapsed. You sleep when exhausted. You eat when food appears. You work when told. But the structure has dissolved into a kind of fluid present where past and future have merged into this single elongated moment of waiting for the inevitable. The concrete walls that have protected you are now your prison. The bunker that kept you safe from bombardment is now the trap you cannot escape. You are sealed in here with dozens of others, all of you waiting for the ceiling to cave in or the door to burst open or the air to run out or some combination of all three. This is the end approaching. You can feel it in the atmosphere. You can see it in the faces around you. You can hear it in the sounds of combat drawing ever closer. Whatever happens next will happen soon. Days at most, possibly hours. The machinery of history is grinding toward a conclusion, and you are here to witness it and probably die in it. The question is no longer if, but how and when. Will you fight? Will you surrender? Will you end it yourself before others can end it for you? These are the questions everyone is asking themselves. These are the final calculations being made by minds that have been pushed to and past their breaking points. You are living the final chapter of a doomed regime. The 1,000-year Reich that lasted 12. The ideology that promised glory and delivered only suffering. the leader who led millions to their deaths and is now leading his final followers to theirs in this underground tomb. This is the end you always knew was coming but could not quite believe would actually arrive. And yet it is arriving. The Soviets are meters away now, not kilometers. The food is measured in meals, not weeks. The generators have hours of fuel left, not days. Every parameter of survival is reaching its terminal point simultaneously. The convergence is almost elegant in its coordination, as if fate itself is ensuring that everything ends at once. This is the end. Welcome to it. You have arrived at the destination that has been inevitable since the moment you descended those stairs into the bunker. The only question left is what you will do in these final hours. Will you maintain your humanity until the last moment? Will you descend into panic and violence? Will you find some kind of peace or acceptance? The choice is yours, for now. Soon even choices will be gone. The end approaches. You can hear it. You can feel it. It is here, in this bunker, in this moment, in the shallow breaths and racing hearts of everyone who remains. History is about to close this chapter, and you are still in it. Conclusion. So, how has your day been? You have spent the equivalent of several weeks inside Hitler's bunker. You have breathed the recycled air, eaten the rancid food, slept in the damp bunks. You have felt the walls shake with each artillery impact. You have watched the supplies dwindle. You have seen people deteriorate physically and psychologically. You have lived, at least in imagination, through one of the most claustrophobic and desperate environments in human history. Let us be clear about what actually happened. The Führerbunker was the site of Hitler's final days. He died there on April 30th, 1945, along with Eva Braun, whom he married the day before. They took cyanide and Hitler shot himself for good measure. Their bodies were burned in the garden above. Many of the bunker's other occupants also died there, by suicide or by Soviet bullets when the complex was finally overrun on May 2nd, 1945. The people who survived were taken prisoner by Soviet forces. Most spent years in captivity. Some never returned. The bunker itself was partially destroyed by the Soviets and later sealed and buried by the East German government, which wanted to prevent it from becoming a neo-Nazi shrine. Today the site is unmarked, covered by a parking lot and apartment buildings. Nothing visible remains except historical records and the testimony of survivors. The story of the bunker is a story of spectacular failure. The failure of an ideology built on hatred and conquest. The failure of military strategy detached from reality. The failure of human judgment at every level from the strategic to the personal. Everyone who ended up in that bunker made choices, some made freely and others under coercion, but all of those choices led to the same place. Here is the wildest part about the whole thing. The suffering in the bunker was self-inflicted. Not by the individuals trapped there necessarily, but by the system they served and the leader they followed. Hitler did not have to start World War II. Germany did not have to pursue genocidal conquest. The military did not have to continue fighting when defeat was inevitable. Every step toward that bunker was a choice made by humans that could have been different. The people in the bunker were not monsters, mostly. They were regular people who made terrible decisions or who found themselves caught in circumstances created by others' terrible decisions. Some were true believers. Some were opportunists. Some were just trying to survive in a world gone mad. Understanding this does not excuse anything, but it reminds us that the capacity for collective self-destruction is not unique to one time or place. It is a human capacity that requires constant vigilance to prevent. Think about what you have learned about the conditions in that bunker. The isolation, the degradation, the fear, the loss of basic human comforts and dignities. Now think about the fact that this was the headquarters of people who inflicted infinitely worse conditions on millions of others. Concentration camps, ghettos, mass executions. The bunker's suffering was trivial compared to the suffering it administered. There is a kind of dark justice in the bunker's story. The people who created horror ended their lives in horror of their own making. But that justice is cold comfort when you think about the millions who died for no reason except ideology and hatred. The bunker story is not a happy ending. It is just an ending. History does not reward us with neat moral conclusions. It just happens, and we are left to make sense of the debris. What can you take from this journey into the bunker? Maybe an appreciation for the world you actually live in. You have electricity that works reliably. You have fresh food and clean water. You have sky and sun and the ability to move freely in space. You have things that the people in the bunker would have given anything to have. These are not just luxuries. They are the basic conditions of human flourishing. Maybe you take away a wariness of certainty. The people who ended up in the bunker were certain. Certain of their ideology. Certain of their rightness. Certain that their enemies were subhuman and their cause was just. That certainty led them down a path that ended 30 feet underground in a concrete box, waiting to die. Certainty is seductive but dangerous. Doubt, humility, and the willingness to question are better guides. Maybe you take away an understanding of how systems fail. The bunker was a failure of system at every level. Military systems that could not adapt to changing conditions. Political systems built on lies and terror. Human systems of judgment and morality that broke down under pressure. Understanding how systems fail is the first step toward building better ones that are more resilient, more humane, more aligned with reality. Or maybe you just take away the story itself. A piece of history that was real, that happened to real people, that has lessons if we choose to learn them. The bunker is gone now, buried under concrete and time. But the memory persists in documents and testimony, and in the careful work of historians who ensure that we do not forget. So tonight, when you go to sleep in your bed, in your home, under a sky full of stars that you can see if you go outside, maybe take a moment to feel grateful. Grateful that you are not in a bunker. Grateful that you have choices and freedoms. Grateful that you live in a time and place where the basic conditions of human existence are not luxuries but givens. And maybe, just maybe, commit to making choices that ensure no one ever ends up in another bunker like that one. Choices for peace over conquest, for dialogue over violence, for humility over certainty, for humanity over ideology. Because the alternative is known. We have seen it. We know where it leads. The bunker is gone, but the capacity for creating new bunkers, literal or metaphorical, remains in human nature. Vigilance against that capacity is the price of never returning to that darkness. Remember the bunker not to glorify it or dwell in morbid fascination, but to understand it well enough to prevent it from happening again. Thank you for taking this journey into the depths. Thank you for witnessing this piece of history in all its grim detail. And thank you for emerging from it, as those trapped there never did, back into the light and air and possibility of a world that still has chances, still has hope, still has the opportunity to be better than what came before. Sleep well. You have earned it. And when you wake up tomorrow, remember that you get to wake up. That simple gift is one the bunker denied to most who entered it. Make it count.